Hello everyone, welcome back to another stream talking about Elden Ring. It's been a hot minute. So if anybody was curious, the last couple weeks I was playing Hollow Knight live on stream. All of those are archived on the live section of the channel if you're interested. I had a blast. The game was better than I was expecting. It does live up to the hype, and yeah, I enjoyed myself. So, like I said, hope you're all doing well. Keaton Martin, nice to see you again. The Real Winnie the Pooh, nice to see you. Mr. Yada, Scowleasy, Doggo. Welcome on in. All right, so Insomnia has led the Real Winnie the Pooh here. Well, my condolences, but all right. So the last time I streamed Elden Ring stuff was more or less reacting to people's content about the DLC. I had a decent number of people request I look at Cosmos's video, and I figure jumping back into Elden Ring stuff, let's go with the trend there and go look at another trailer analysis. And then after Cosmos's video, I was thinking we can look at Ratatosker's new video about the... Oh, I should probably pull... Hold on. I forgot to pull up my playlist. After that, I will look at Ratatosker's video on the Mausoleum Knights. Okay, here we go.
After 2 years...
Right, and yeah, so first I have queued up Shadow of the Erdtree full lore breakdown by Cosmos, then What is the Purpose of the Wandering Mausoleums by Ratatosker, and then another thumbnail which caught my eye was Shadow of the Erdtree Analysis and Speculation by Mostnir? I don't know how to pronounce that. And the thumbnail says The Veiled Crucible. Now, I've shared before that I think there's a good possibility that if the Erdtree was born in the Shadowlands or whatnot, it should be kind of related to the Crucible. So I'm curious to see where they go with this video. So that's kind of what I've got on tap for tonight, and we'll dive in just a moment here. But before going into all that, just earlier today, people were sharing with me the new tweet of enemy design that got shared on, or it's an X now, I don't know. So this is the Elden Ring official Twitter X page, whatever. I'm just going to say Twitter, you guys know. Fearsome foes of unfathomable power await you in the realm of shadow. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. So this thing is super cool looking. Obviously it's got like the omen horns, this kind of goofy looking mask that kind of reminds me of the river spirit from Spirited Away. What looks to almost be like two chakram. I don't know if it's Chakram. I don't really know, to be honest. And this dude seems to be an omen. Apparently, we've already had some cursed comments in the greater Elden Ring community with some people theorizing that this is Godwin. All I can say about that is more power to those theorists. I certainly don't buy it yet, but I mean, I'm willing to be wrong about it. So, yeah, these blades look super cool. We don't quite have a weapon like this in the game yet, so this could be a teaser for a new weapon style. And if these kind of Chakram type weapons exist in the game, then maybe there's a possibility that the bone turtle looking like thing that has like a bone boomerang could also have a similar type weapon that we can use. So I'm really looking forward to that. This design is super cool. I don't really have too much else to say about it other than like its tattered cloak reminds me of Moog, but I don't know if I would be saying that without the horns. I think I would, because I mean I don't know, tattered cloth, big deal. And then these bracers are also kind of interesting, but I didn't like compare them to other stuff in the game, so I don't really know what else to make of that. So to welcome everyone else into the stream who's been hopping in, I want to say hello to Save Frog, Sven Stoffels, Red Eye, Morlor, nice to see you again, Tanner, nice to have you, and Future Warrior Hero 123, welcome on in. So it looks like chat will be popping off tonight, so I might not like be able to read everybody's messages out there, so thanks for sticking in the wings. All right, thank you, Winnie. I appreciate that. They also shared one of the loading screens, did they? Thanks for letting me know. Well, this is Twitter. I probably can't see anything worthwhile.
16.
Oops. Yeah, I don't know how Twitter works anymore. Like, nothing's chronological. I can't sort stuff because I don't have an account. I freaking hate Twitter at this point. All right. So, yeah, we got that new enemy design, which is super cool, super exciting. Really looking forward to that. Oh, you'll post it in the Discord? Thank you. All right, let me look for it. What channel did you do it? I'm assuming Elden Ring lore or maybe general. Oh, feedback. Or no? Maybe you just didn't get there yet. All right. Q with I, welcome on in. Madness, you tell me all day. Thank you. Oh no, I don't even remember what sentence I said. Was it super sus? Kitao posted the loading screen. Okay, thank you. Not on the Twitter. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Can't wait to lose your marbles for 3 days trying to beat him. Freaking fire giants. All right. Yeah, so we've only got a little bit more than a month left until the DLC launches. I'm considering potentially trying to do a lore through before that happens, but honestly, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time, even if I started today, depending on like how thorough I want it to be. Yeah, I don't know. Because like there's a big part of me that is like tempted to do it. Maybe I should, even if like run out of time. But I also do want to say that I will go radio silent as far as like content creation stuff goes when the DLC drops, because I would like to just sit back, enjoy it, and then like analyze it more or less on my own / with the Discord and whatnot. So if I did begin streaming the game, I wouldn't necessarily go right into the DLC if it dropped, is kind of what I'm saying here. So. Okay, it's posted. Thank you, Morlor. Appreciate that. Oh, this is the loading screen. Okay, I didn't see... Like, I saw the picture, and I was like, is this just a... what's it called? Screenshot from the trailer? Because, I mean, obviously we've seen this very mysterious lady. Okay, so we didn't get the back of the chair before. That explains it. Yeah, I did look at the chair before... on like the video, but like not super in depth. Teen Sith on the Discord said this is the same style of chair that's used in the Caria Manor. I wouldn't be surprised if it shows up elsewhere and or in like Dark Souls 3, but yeah, so good sleuthing on her part there. Yeah, I've been a little bit busy today, so I've kind of fallen behind on the chat, to be honest. Not like the stream chat, but also like the Discord. I need to catch up. Hey Bella, nice to see you again. Okay, Winnie. I gotcha. All right, and Future Warrior, my day's, it's going, it's moving. Glad to be streaming some Elden Ring. The dog isn't being too rambunctious. He's keeping himself occupied, so that's good. All right. So now we will dive into our first video of the night with Shadow of the Erdtree Full Breakdown Elden Ring Lore by Cosmos. Posted probably like one day, a couple days after the trailer dropped. All right. And I think I probably changed some settings around inadvertently, so let me know how the audio balance is for you guys when I begin to play the video. And I'll also turn on closed captions for anybody who may desire such things.
After 2 years of waiting, we finally have our first proper look at the DLC for Elden Ring, and boy, was the wait worth it. It looks absolutely mind-blowing and there is a lot to talk about. Today, I want to take you through all the new information we got through the trailer, official screenshots and Miyazaki interviews, to do a complete breakdown of the lore of the DLC with a solid dose of speculation, as well as take a look at all the new content and gameplay changes we can expect. I know I am very late to releasing this video, so a lot of the...
Didn't this come out like a week? When did the trailer drop? Wasn't it actually like February 28th or something? Or was 22nd? So 10 days, super late. But I mean, that is kind of true in like the way that news moves now. I guess if we can call this news. Hype, I guess. All right, so Jay Moore, welcome back to the stream. You asked, will I stream the DLC? At some point, definitely. Just not my very first run through it. Gives you Bloodborne vibes.
Things will have been already...
Hey, Next, nice to see you again. It's okay being late.
There will be at least some stuff you haven't seen elsewhere. And I promise you that by the end of this, you will understand why this is the most excited I have ever been for any From Software release. And with that being said, let's get started.
DLC trailer lore breakdown.
Pure and radiant, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
The trailer starts off with an unknown figure standing in front of the Empyrean's cocoon in Mogwin's palace, with the decrepit arm of Miquella's carcass hanging. As many have been theorizing, it seems that this will be indeed where we will be accessing the DLC, as confirmed by Miyazaki in an interview. This already makes it clear that this DLC will be balanced around the endgame of Elden Ring, as you will be required to defeat Mohg, the Lord of Blood, to interact with the cocoon. For a standard new...
Yeah, I'm not sure what level I actually want to be going into the DLC. I kind of really need to prepare a character. To be honest, I still also have all of the saves for my very first playthrough of the game, but I'm not exactly sure I want to go into the DLC with that build, but it would be kind of fun to see how it shapes up. With all that being said, my... After I beat... So I fought Mohg last, but I also decided to stop leveling up after I beat Millennia because I heard she was the strongest boss in the game, and I didn't want to just end up inadvertently over-leveling everything. Mo, the Lord of Blood, yeah. Sometimes the auto captions can be pretty rough out here. Red Eye's going to go in at level 145, regular new game. Yeah, I was wondering if, like, around that would be good. I should double check my save file to see what level I was after Millennia. Because I thought I fought her around, like, 127, maybe? I don't know. Somewhere around there.
Game, the recommended character level would be at least 100 to 120. Though usually, most players will be around 150 by this point in game. And of course, with maximum upgrades on your weapons. Interestingly, Miyazaki has mentioned that they have added a new progression mechanic to the DLC, similar to attack power from Sekiro, in order to allow even the higher level characters to feel themselves growing stronger over the course of the adventure.
Yeah, and that was something that I was going to bring up if he didn't. I am glad that Cosmos took his time to like wait for the interviews or like to parse through the interviews and like, you know, figure stuff out. Just because there's like a lot of wild speculation going out just because people didn't know that the interviews were also dropped on the same day. That was a pretty crazy time to be a content creator, and I was absent for it because I was trying to work on a completely different video. But them's the break sometimes. I'm also not like super good at keeping up with the super speedy release schedule of like breaking news and whatnot. Anyway, that's all kind of irrelevant. The point that I wanted to make is, with all of us talking about like what levels we want to be going into the DLC, I am very curious to see how this new system is going to be implemented. I mean, I hope it's going to be good, but I'm very skeptical. Like, I think the only way it kind of makes sense to me, and it kind of also sounds awful, would be if they did something similar to the fetid, rotted, cursed chalice curses in Bloodborne. Sorry for like the repetition there, but for anybody who may not know, in Bloodborne, you can conduct what's called chalice rituals to go into these pseudo-randomized dungeons, and having more cursed rituals affects like the player's health pool and how much damage enemies and stuff do. So I wonder if going into the realm of shadow, it'll like artificially cap our stats to some degree, because it would make perhaps the most sense. But like I said, like going along with that would also be really annoying. So yeah. Hey, Elden enthusiast, nice to see you again. Hopefully it's like Vendrick from Dark Souls 2. Oh, yeah, I could see that working, like with the giant kinships and whatnot. Red Eye's wondering how it'll work as well. You hope it's like Sekiro, but the Bloodborne ritual thing wouldn't be optimal. The thing is, I don't know what solution could work, which is why I'm very curious to see what we end up with, because if they do it, it'll just kind of like probably blow my mind. So here's crossing our fingers for the DLC. Hey Ryushu, nice to see you again.
There seems to be another condition for accessing the DLC with a very interesting lore implication, so we will leave that for a bit later. For now, we can hear a character talking about how Miquella shrives the heart of men through his love and radiance. Shriving here meaning absolving them. This is in line with everything we knew about Miquella from the base game, where he was constantly portrayed as a pure and benevolent figure who strives to help even the most destitute under the Golden Order. But
so it's kind of funny because I did recently see like some tweets complaining about the translation of the trailer content, and like somebody took issue with them using shriving here, which is just kind of like funny to me. They're like, oh, this isn't like really what that means. Like they mean like anyway. The important point is I feel like the language used is consistent with what was used in previous FromSoft games, and I don't know if the person who was like making these initial complaints were like aware of that. So, well, of course, like the trailer stuff isn't going to be a one-to-one literal translation. I don't remember there being anything too significantly different off the top of my head, which isn't to say that there's, you know, no differences. Oh, okay. I guess like the one difference that like kind of stands out to my mind would be like them calling him Kind Miquella in the trailer, but they mean kind in the sense of like Wunderkind, like the German sense, because the Japanese is just Miquella Sama, which, you know, like Lord Miquella, all that nonsense. Hey Nectarine, how's it going? What were shriving stones called in Japanese? I would need to look it up, to be honest, because I don't recall. Let's pop it up. Shriveled shriving stone. Like Lost Stone? Because they were meant to undo like weapon infusions. So yeah, like this character's stone, Ishi, Seki in this case, and Soshitsu is to like lose. Yeah, and there's no like real flavor text to give more indication, so I don't know. Okay, good question though. All right. Hey Eric Williams, how's it going? And Rob, welcome on in. So, okay, if you guys don't know what Shriving Stones did, in Dark Souls 3, they were done to undo weapon infusions. So if you think about like Ashes of War in Elden Ring allowing you to put like the holy blood, occult, all those types of elements onto your weapons, in Dark Souls 3, they were not that freely available to alter the weapons, and so you would need to use certain like elemental stones to infuse your weapons, and then shriving stones would undo those infusions, so you could use a different type of infusion later on. You need me as the detail guy if a Bloodborne show is ever adapted? Oh, y'all need me? Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Hey, Eldegusta, how's it going? What's the thesis of this lore stream? Oh, we're just checking out more videos and whatnot.
But also, this character goes on to say that this in itself is terrifying, reminding us again of the underlying creepiness of Miquella's love that has been hinted at before. Definitely something to keep in mind. This unknown narrator could potentially be another Tarnished who followed the trail of Miquella, as Miyazaki confirmed in an interview that we will...
Just like an aside note for Cosmos, I liked that little graphic that they used for the items. It was very clean.
...be meeting with others on the same path. And towards the end of the trailer, we can hear this NPC who seems to be guiding us towards our destination. That is, entering the Shadowlands, the world hidden within the shadow of the Erdtree.
So yeah, that person who steps in front of Miquella's cocoon, I'm not necessarily sure if that's supposed to be a completely different NPC or just a variant of the Tarnished with unique armor for the DLC. I could see it going either way.
Come now, touch the withered arm and travel to the realm of shadow. I will not be far behind. May we meet again.
As we are treated to shots of this land, we can instantly recognize the map shown in the original teaser image released a year ago.
And this kind of teaser image is kind of annoying because like none of the landscape by the Shadow Tree matches with what we see. So it's kind of what you get for analyzing concept art so thoroughly sometimes, where like stuff changes, it isn't always representative of the final product of the game, or maybe there's a secret third tree, the darker Shadow Tree, I don't know. Anyway,
where we could see what looked like Miquella riding what looked like Torrent, and we can even find the recognizable ghostly graves and ruined arches littering the field. And from this very first shot, we can already spot some very curious things. What jumps to the eyes at first are these two big castles, here and here. Most likely legacy dungeons, but what's most interesting to me is this and this. The first structure is actually...
Yeah, they do look like the belfries. So Nectarine, I almost feel like I need to ban you for coming up with that beautiful pun faster than I did by calling it the third tree.
The same as the belfries found in the Urnia of the Lakes, from where you could access various regions of interest through portals. The Eternal City of Nokron, the Crumbling City of Farum-Azula, and Stormveil Castle. The belfries are also interesting because they have on them the only other depiction of this guy over here. This big boy is sometimes called Elden John and was an important figure of the ancient dynasty and has been the subject of much speculation. Keep him in the corner of your mind because the Shadowland, as we will see, seems to have a deep connection to this civilization. The other structure we see in the horizon is actually a cathedral, very much the same layout as the Cathedral of Manu Celeste in the Moonlight Altar. But this...
And I've also wondered if that cathedral that he just showed a moment ago is what you can also see when you see the what people call the Radagon bear, the one that has like the red hair and the Crucible style horns on it.
This one is actually in much better shape. In the next shot, we can see a map fragment obelisk in a small town in the fields, and it seems to somehow be covered in drapes. Something we'll see a lot in this trailer. The meaning of what it might represent is still unclear for now. In the background, we can see our first glimpse of the Shadow and Thorns Crumbling Legacy Dungeon, which will serve as a landmark for us in a bit. This is our first proper wide view of the Shadowlands, and there is a lot to unpack here. The area in front of the character we will call the Central Field, for a lack of better word. Here we can see the draped town from the previous shot, and based on the angle, we can see just a bit of the Crumbling Legacy Dungeon to the left. Here is the belfry and here is the cathedral. In the field, we can also see for the first time these spiraling pillars. Further back in the center, we see two legacy dungeons. The one closer seems to be a medium-sized dungeon, kind of like Castle Morn, while the structure in the background is gigantic in comparison. Very possibly the main legacy dungeon of the Shadowlands. we can see a structure that visually looks like it is collecting the gold seeping from the shadow tree. Most definitely very purposeful imagery by From Software. And
yeah, now that I think about it, we didn't really have too much like Tower of Latria in Elden Ring, or like a lot of vertical stuff that goes upwards. Because most of that stuff kind of gets taken care of by elevators for the most part. So I could imagine a fairly difficult legacy dungeon contained within a relatively small space by like doing vertical stuff. Oh no, psyching myself out already. Hey Future Warrior, would I be willing to do a video that is basically a versus video of Dark Souls deities versus Elden Ring deities? I don't really feel like that would be my forte, but it's a very interesting idea nonetheless. I don't really have strong feelings about it. I'd really need to think about that more. Is Cosmos French? I actually don't know his ethnicity. Dago says, the landscapes of all the From games are logical and impossible. Even in Elden Ring, we're shown and told impossible things, like entire cities banished underground. Maybe impossible for real life, but they got magic in this game. Yada wants platforming boss battles, and you're not kidding. Honestly, with the jump being integrated into Elden Ring, that could make for like a really good gimmick fight. Perhaps because you could like execute the Ancient Wyvern from Dark Souls 3, but a lot better here. Okay.
Yes, it is apparently called the Shadow Tree as opposed to the Golden Tree of the Lands Between. Miyazaki did say in an interview that the name carries multiple meanings, but the most obvious one seems to be that it is a mirror or inversion of the Erdtree in this world. And I say this world because the Shadowlands, as you might have guessed, is not physically in the Lands Between. And these lands are neither the future nor the past. They are a realm that supposedly occupies the same space as the Lands Between, but due to a yet undisclosed event, they have become inaccessible. If the Shadowlands used to be a physical place in the Lands Between, or if it was always a sort of other realm, is unclear to me as of yet. Though many have speculated that it could be a landmass that fills the lake in the middle of the map. Perhaps the most striking element of this view is the veil over the skybox of the Shadowlands. It echoes the drapes covering some of the ruins on the ground, and Miyazaki explains that one of the things they represent is how this land has been hidden away. And
so one thing that I noticed kind of recently trying to get more footage for Elden Ring was when you're on the Divine Towers. I mean, I noticed it a long time ago, but it just kind of became more focal this time around. In certain spots, the Erdtree will become occluded by like this kind of black misty thing that doesn't necessarily look quite like these veils, but you know, before I just kind of shrugged it off my shoulders thinking it's just more for like the ambiance than anything. But now with the shadow of the Erdtree's reveal, it's got me thinking and scratching my chin a lot more, you know? When he said, have they said how many hours it roughly adds? So Miyazaki was like, I don't know, bro. Because apparently when he was asked about the base game for Elden Ring, he said 30 hours. And people are like, that's bullcrap. It's over 100. And then he's like, well, at this point, I've played the game so much, I'm like, nobody on the dev team could be like a fair assessor of how long. So he just like didn't even try to answer that question. A DMO, welcome on in. You don't think it's only the lake that got shifted into the Shadow Realm? Yeah, I don't really know. I do really like Crunchy's idea that the Shadowlands are literally upside down from the Lands Between. And rather than thinking that this would be... Anyway, so it would be like upside down and not like this would be north. I don't know. I don't know how to phrase this off the top of my head right now. Anyway. So yeah, I don't know if it was the middle of the lake or if it's something else. I mean, obviously with the Erdtree analog being here, it should suggest that it would be around that section of the map, but a lot of that stuff is really contingent on how the Shadowlands became separated from the Lands Between, which we just don't know too much about. And with like all of the crumbling debris falling, but not exactly falling, floating around, and the shifts in the land masses, so like the roots are disconnected from itself in other places. I've also wondered whether this place was affected by the shattering and if that could have also affected things, but yeah, lot to dig in there. Hey, Crunchy. Hey, upside down theory confirmed. Yeah, Crunchy, if you want to elaborate on it, because I just did not articulate it very well, and I actually don't feel like pulling out the MS Paint. But yeah, no, I will definitely give you credit for that idea. I like it. I don't know if I'm fully on board with it, because I feel like I am a perpetual fence sitter as it comes to Elden Ring lore. Just waiting for the time where I can see, like, solid ground with which to put my feet on, and it hasn't happened yet. I feel like freaking Frogger about to get hit by a bus with all this new lore on the horizon.
Lucky explains that one of the things they represent is how this land has been hidden away, and the similarities of this veil to the baldachin of Marika's bedroom is not a coincidence, as the major focus of the DLC will not just be to uncover the purpose of Miquella coming here, but also unveiling Marika's past, as the Shadow Realm.
Oh yeah, that actually reminds me. So, if you look at Marika's shawl, I don't really think this might fully match up, but I did have a lingering thought. Okay. This is why I shouldn't rely on YouTube for fast forward and backwards. Alright, so. Alright, I'm just gonna pull up the trailer my damn self. Okay. I can't zoom in. Okay, time to pull up the trailer thing. Where is it? Wrong folder. Sorry for the noise thing. Let's do that. Okay, don't have to worry about noise. Here I am trying to use like the YouTube hotbar instead of the VLC one. Oh no, it'd be way early, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm going to take a screenshot and then I will zoom enhance to make a point here in just a second. Alrighty. Oh, why is this so small? Okay. So let's do our zoom enhance. That doesn't work. Okay, anyway. So I've wondered whether or not this weird looking like thing in the background could be related to Marika's shawl that was shown in like 5 seconds here.
Miquella coming here, but
so yeah, I don't fully believe this, but it looked curious enough where I have lingering doubts, which I feel like I have lingering doubts about freaking everything in Elden Ring. Alright, so Crunchy said his theory is basically something like the roots of the Erdtree is another tree, but yeah, you don't put a probability on it being true, you just embrace the frenzy. Indeed. Winnie said you read somewhere that the size of the DLC is going to be like Lane Dell, or what I had heard was the size of the DLC was supposed to be equivalent to Limgrave, but it has multiple legacy dungeons, and if Limgrave includes like Shifa River and whatnot, and or the Weeping Peninsula, I mean it's still very sizable. Even if you just look at like all the people who played the network test, it took them a decent amount of time to like fully map out Limgrave and stuff, but I'm kind of in it for the lore at this point. There could probably be like no bosses, and I'd still be curious to see what they'd give us. Yada says there's a weird landmass visible in the ocean from the Altus Tower. You wonder if that's a landmark in the Shadowlands. Could you elaborate on the weird landmass? Because the one that comes to mind is like the abrupt cliff that like goes into this gigantic waterfall that extends from the mountaintops of the Giants towards like Caelid and the Bestial Sanctum.
but also unveiling Marika's past, as the Shadow Realm are said to be the land where Marika first descended and attained godhood, as well as the birthplace of the Erdtree. This reveal honestly feels dizzying to me and is the reason why I have never been more excited for a DLC by From Software before. Not only has this been somewhat in line with what I predicted / hoped for a DLC, It also seems to be that this time around, Miyazaki and the teams are not shying away from actually giving us answers on major story elements that have never been addressed in the main game, as it seems.
I'm gonna go ahead and press X to doubt. No, so to be fair, I feel like Bloodborne's DLC, The Old Hunters, did answer a lot of questions, but by that same token, it also raised many others in its own kind of way. And I would say that was also definitely the case, perhaps. Maybe not so much for the Ashes of Ariandel. Maybe that doesn't really answer a lot of questions, but the Ringed City kind of answers some questions, but just raises a hell of a lot more in the process. So I am apprehensive about what we'll see. Hey, Mortis, nice to see you again. They'll find a way to tell us nothing. Yeah. Did Radahn smashing Farum Azula cause the dragons to attack? Well, we don't necessarily know if Radahn did smash Farum Azula, and depending on one's headcanon, that might interfere with when you think Deathroot got into Farum Azula, or like the timeline of Farum Azula's removal from the Lands Between could affect like your personal headcanons. And yeah, as Matt says, he thinks the Elden Star is what crashed into Farum Azula. I don't know, like I saw a video, or maybe there's like an offhanded comment somewhere which made a lot of sense to me, and I was surprised I didn't think about it before. But whoever said it, sorry that I don't remember who it was, pointed out that the Ruins Greatsword uses purple gravity style magic, and it got its power from that meteorite. And so if the meteorite that crashed into Farum Azula imbued the ruins with purple gravity magic, it might be more unlikely for it to have been the golden star which bore the Elden Ring and the Elden Beast. So that's something to chew on there. Oh, it was Chadwick. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was a good point. All right, so it's in my own chat. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell and remember where all of these disparate pieces of info come from. And friend Alex says that sounds more like Estelle. And yeah, so yeah, I don't even want to go there. Not just because like I don't want to talk about it, but just because it's opening up a whole new can of worms. But thanks for the comment. And Dr. N, nice to see you again. It's all good, Chadwick.
Seems this DLC will shed light not only on the conflicts that led to Marika being a god, but also the history of her people, the Numen. But let's come back to this a bit later. Going back to the landscape of the Shadowlands, we can see far to the left a region full of greenery and some peculiar architecture there. We actually get a closer look later in the trailer and in some screenshots on the website. This place shows already that we can expect some fairly diverse biomes in the DLC, and the ruins they rest on seems to be those of the Blackstone civilization.
Yeah, and this forest area really fascinates me because surprisingly enough, there aren't actually green forests in the Lands Between, because they're all like all of the flora, with the exception of like, you know, shrubs and stuff, and the trees that grow within the Lake of Liurnia, they are all like red or yellow hued. Like there's very little actual greenery in the game if you don't count grass. But I think even the grass might tend to have a yellow hue. I would need to double check. But anyway, there's nothing quite like this as far as like the actual mature trees go in the Lands Between. But yeah, he's on point with all the Blackstone civilization stuff here too.
The website. This place shows already that we can expect some fairly diverse biomes in the DLC, and the ruins they rest on seems to be those of the Blackstone civilization, the same civilization behind the creation of the golems as well as the divine towers. Nothing is known about it beyond the fact that they have gone to ruin a very long time ago, but the Shadowlands
Sorry, I gotta be pedantic because Mortis said there's like one green forest in Limgrave near Fort Height, but that's it. Here's where you're wrong, bucko. Let me... Limgrave Minor. So they do kind of look greenish, I will give you that, but when you actually zoom in and whatnot, they're still yellow. Like, they're not as gold as the minor Erdtrees, but they're not actually green trees. Like, it's more pronounced over here. And, like, all of these trees are still yellow. But yeah, like in my head, it seemed natural to think of the forest as being green. But when I actually like stopped and looked, I was like, wait a second. That's not green at all. And my condolences to all who may be colorblind and dealing with that. It looks pretty green to you. Autumn leaves ruining the green, yeah. Oh, wait. What is this? That's my trailer. Let me turn this off. It's not... There we go.
About it beyond the fact that they have gone to ruin a very long time ago, but the Shadowlands acting almost as a snapshot of the world before the Erdtree might be an opportunity to get some more information, as it seems this time around we will actually get to explore some actual ruins rather than just pillars. While in the background of this shot you can also see this thing over here. It's really hard to tell what it is and we do not get another angle on it. And by the way, this is not the full view of the Shadowlands. As we will see from the cover art and the rest of the trailer, there is more structures to the left and right that are not visible. And the geography also seems to be extremely chaotic and has a lot of height variation and verticality, which makes it so a lot of the areas are out of sight, tucked away in some misty valley. In terms of pure surface area...
Actually, now looking at that... Damn it, I hate YouTube sometimes.
Extremely chaotic.
Looking at this, I thought there were actual mountains here, but apparently not. Because this is like concept art, it could just be stylized and not show it. I'm kind of doubtful that this would be the case, but I thought like the gladiator-looking woman would be around this region with like a bunch of spires, because I'm pretty sure from down behind Messmer, you get like a look towards the right and you can see mountains sticking up like around this region, but maybe not. Anyway, Crunchy said the greenish leaves tell a story. Like for real though, like having my own Pepe Ofnir moment, looking into the foliage of the lands between and whatnot. Weenie doesn't think the Erdtree uses photosynthesis. Not anymore. It used to shine like the sun. It is the photosynthesis. It's more like death synthesis, to borrow a term from Saga Frontier 1. Morlor found a green tree in Limgrave. Yeah, so there are occasional like green trees, but they're not the mature trees. They tend to be like saplings, but maybe like slightly bigger. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and post a picture in the Discord, I will gladly share it with the chat. And then Chadwick asks, is it near the Frenzy Tower? There's no Frenzy Tower in Limgrave, or you might be responding to something else. Okay. Going back to the video.
And has a lot of height variation and verticality, which makes it so a lot of the areas are out of sight, tucked away in some misty valley. In terms of pure surface area though, Miyazaki has said that this DLC is a bit bigger than Limgrave, but do not let that information fool you, as it seems this time around, learning from their experience working on Elden Ring's open fields, From Software decided to focus on a much more dense map with less empty space, and I would guess a very aggressive use of layers and verticality, which would make...
Alright, so like I said a moment ago, these tend to be the smaller trees. I don't call them mature because they're not as big as the other ones, and most are still like yellow. But yeah, I thought I specified, maybe I didn't, maybe I wasn't clear enough, but yeah, pretty much all of the mature trees, if they're not dead or like brown red, will be yellow. And there's a bit of an exception also with the trees that are closest to minor Erdtrees. They tend to take on a more reddish hue and end up looking a bit more orange. And that's most easily visible in Liurnia, the southwest minor Erdtree there, because you can look at the Liurnian style trees. Actually, I just have a picture I'll show you guys. And the biggest exception that I've seen to the to the tree leaf color changes would be in the Mistwood, because they don't get that much more orange near that minor Erdtree. Okay, this will probably be a good one. Yeah. So near the lake, you'll have the green trees, and then the closer you get to the minor Erdtree, the more orange they become. So this is like still like the normal yellow, but like right next to the minor Erdtree, they get more orange. No, the Mistwood isn't actually green. It's still like yellow tinted, surprisingly. I feel like part of the reason why it's not that noticeable is because when you're in it, it tends to be a bit shadier and the game isn't super saturated. And there might also be like differences between monitors and whatnot.
For an area that feels a lot bigger than its actual surface would suggest. And that is already something that can be observed in the base game with the Whipping Peninsula, for example, which is an area that only accounts for a third of Limgrave, but feels much bigger than it actually is and has a lot of variety. While Liurnia of the Legs, for example, can often feel like mostly vast stretches of flat ground with not much going on. All of this to say that surface area says very little of how much content or playtime the DLC will have, and there seems to be a focus on incorporating and innovating on lessons learned. The team also expressed their focus on blurring the line between Legacy Dungeon and Overworld, in an effort not to only make the transition seamless, but also create new and better gameplay and exploration experiences. Next, we are treated to shots of what I think are some of the NPCs we will be meeting in the Shadowlands, giving us also a taste of some of the incredible armors From Software has cooked for us. The first shot seems to be placed between the medium-sized Legacy Dungeon and the main Legacy Dungeon, somewhere over here, close to where that fire and the belfry would be actually. I believe this is our first confirmation of night time in the Shadowlands as well, and we can also see the same old moon later in the trailer with this lovely fellow. Miyazaki was asked about this enemy and refused to talk about it because of spoilers, so who knows what it is. It will remind some of...
I can't wait for this thing to have only one item description mention it in passing, and it'd be like something equivalent to like a rusty coin that it'll drop, because this dude doesn't actually have anything to drop of its own. It'll just be beautiful.
View of the worm face due to its mouth, and it seems to actually have 3 or 4 pairs of eyes. Overall, a very alien looking enemy, which is accentuated by the framing of the moon in this shot. Back to the Night Figure, I believe that this is actually the very NPC we saw in front of Miquella's cocoon in Mogwin's palace. The cape's embroidery and color seems to match to my eye despite the different lighting, though you guys let me know what you see. In front of him, there is what looks like a...
I feel like the other cape was more ornate, but I mean, styles can change from the top to the bottom, so I don't really know there.
rune. In Elden Ring, each great rune received by a demigod has a distinct look to it, reflecting the influence of its user and their spirit. Radahn's rune is...
Oh yeah, Crunchy, you didn't realize that there was night in the Shadowlands? That was like one of the first things that I noticed, because I was like, oh my god, there's a moon. Wait a second, this moon looks like the exact same that we'd find in Limgrave. And with the flatworm head looking like thing, it almost seemed like our vantage point for looking at that moon would be somewhat equivalent to where we would be in Limgrave, by the bridge that would go to Castle Morn, or the Everjail that Blythe gets stuck in, whatever it's called.
Is fiery to fight the encroaching rot, while Melania's harbors her Aeonian butterflies. This rune seems to be made of pure golden light rather than gold amber crystal. The first line of the trailer insisted on Miquella's radiance, and the orientation of the circle matches that of Melania, as would be expected of the great runes of siblings.
So that's an interesting point to bring up, that the rune itself is kind of radiant. I don't know how fair an assessment that is, because we don't exactly see 2 fingers next to it to see if that's the kind of benediction that it gives off. But if anything, this just shows the invitation to smash. I have no idea why that just came into my head right now after all this time, but anyway, yeah, I'll just leave that there.
First line of the trailer insisted on Miquella's radiance, and the orientation of the circle matches that of Melania, as would be expected of the great runes of siblings. I feel fairly confident in saying that this rune was left behind by Miquella. Now, it's obviously not the actual great rune, but...
So, yeah, I think there's a good chance. Of course, I'll never, like, take a fully supported position with anything in Elden Ring at this point, but... when you look at the very end of the trailer, you've got the pre-order gesture that's called Miquella's Ring, and has the prisoner doing like the ring gesture except off to their right, so it would look like the rune that we just saw. So that seems to be pretty suggestive. However, with the ring gesture meant to show off the full Elden Ring, it does make me wonder if there's enough room to argue that Miquella's rune could be what you would get with the Elden Ring if he were to become the god / vessel for it. So there's still room to argue about everything in a FromSoft game, of course. Hey, Without Horns, nice to see you again.
But I wonder if these won't be the traces left behind that we will have to follow. Maybe they even act as a point of grace in the Shadowlands. This guy's armor seems to have a more ancient design, as he wears a Roman side breastplate and skirt. His black cape fur looks amazing, and his sword's motif and design is similar to Radahn's guard as well. This guy is wearing a stone armor, a Havel 2.0 maybe, and seems to love his pot.
Yeah, that dude reminds me of Tragoth, just without the bull horns.
Potentate, perhaps. Behind him, we get a closer look at those spiral pillars, as well as one of the major legacy dungeons of the Shadowlands. The next area is very intriguing, and its color and theme seems to relate to sleep, specifically to Saint Trina, Miquella's identity as he appeared in people's dreams. And we can even see glowing purple lilies, similar to Trina lilies, in the back. This seems to be in a cave, and the figure on the ground definitely seems to fit that sleep aesthetic. Not sure if it's an NPC or a boss. And last but not least, we have what looks like a room from Raya Lucaria. In case you're wondering, there isn't such a room in the academy, but this is most certainly the exact same architecture and furnishing. It seems they are using glintstone for illumination, and at the center sits a figure very similar to who I will call John Lucaria, who can be seen in the hourglass and the grand lift of Dectus.
It's funny because I think that figure is feminine, and same thing with like the gladiator. So just like the gendering is kind of funny to me. Not too important. I was also going to make the point that within that Carian-style room, more like Raya Lucarian-style room, there's also cages, but it doesn't entirely look like bird cages. I mean, they do, because like what else would they be? But if these are bird cages, could that imply the cuckoo? Now, with me implying the cuckoo, that could make people infer that it would mean like the Raya Lucarian cuckoo, but I always think it's important to point out that the Black Moon of Noxtella talisman does have 2 cuckoo on top of it. Let me pull up a picture. Moon. So yeah, you've got 2 cuckoo at the top of this. So the idea of the cuckoo could predate the academy and whatnot. So you see them as feminine. Twin bird, yeah, the Miquella's ring emote, I guess I'll pull up the trailer again, is at the very end. Oh, I'm trying to use the YouTube thing again. There we go. So pre-order to get in-game bonus gesture Ring of Miquella. And since that kind of like looks like the crescent style thing that we saw a moment ago, I think there's a good amount of reason to believe that would have been Miquella's rune, but you know, open to interpretation. Crunchy said, what were they doing with cuckoos anyway? You mean in like here or Raya Lucaria? My headcanon, that I guess I can't really call it headcanon. Just like one theory that I've had is more like, with cuckoos talking about the transience of the body and whatnot, they may have tried body swapping because, like, Selen does the whole puppet thing. Raya Lucaria has a ton of puppets for whatever reason. There's also, like, the ancient astrologer primal glintstone blade ceremony type thing going on. So I think it might have been used in a time when destined death would still kill things for certain groups of people to avoid death rituals, which might also tie into things like the what are they called? The deathbed companions kind of rebirthing people before like their souls get sucked into the Erdtree, I guess. There seems to be like a really big theme of trying to avoid the finality of death within Elden Ring from like multiple different angles, which is very fascinating to me. Oh yeah, and Morlor says, the Mausoleum steed also has a cuckoo on it. True story. Cuckoos are tough. They do hate albinorks, though. Yeah. You meant the actual cuckoos? Why do they keep birds? Envoys of the twin bird. That's a really good question. Unfortunately, I don't really have a better answer, but that would more or less actually be like my shoot from the hip best guess as to an answer. So yeah, like actually, I guess I could build off that a bit more. Like cuckoos are emblematic of being what are they called exactly? Not like host parasites, but they will lay their eggs in another bird's nest, and from that, the infant cuckoos will proceed to like knock out all of the other native eggs to that nest, so that way they get all of the food that their would-be parents would give them, so that way they can ensure their survival, and they don't necessarily have to take care of their own young. And so I think that is just kind of emblematic of the idea of taking your egg, your soul, and implanting it into a new nest, a new body, whether that be a puppet or a person, and living out a kind of new life that way, perhaps. So yeah, and that might also tie into why Renala is obsessed with the amber egg and rebirthing rituals, but it does leave me wanting for more that the whole like Radigan situation kind of obscured what's going on with her there. But very good questions.
They are using glintstone for illumination, and at the center sits a figure very similar to who I will call John Lucaria, who can be seen in the hourglass and the grand lift of Dectus. And with this shot in particular, I am honestly very intrigued as to what exactly is the Shadowlands. My original prediction for the DLC from over a year ago was that Miquella went to sleep, or rather effectively died, in order to reach a spirit world of sorts, and we will also be going there following his footsteps. The other condition for entering the Shadowlands I mentioned earlier is to kill Radahn, something I had speculated back then as being a requirement to enter this world due to him potentially being the force holding back the eclipse. And the Shadowlands, as we will see, certainly has plenty of locales that sells it as an underworld of sorts. The name itself can be directly interpreted as the Land of Death, as Destined Death is very often referred to as Shadow in-game, being the forbidden shadow plucked from the Elden Ring at the creation of Marika's Golden Order. And that removal would fit the unknown event that has made the Shadowlands unreachable, as I had suspected that it was what closed the way to the spirit world and confined the souls of the dead to the lands between, so that they can...
He got stuck with the low poly models. Anyway, somebody just asked something that was good. Oh yeah, Florge, nice to see you again. What are my thoughts on Godwin doing anything in the DLC? The community has been abysmally wrong about who goes where before. That's a good question, and I honestly don't really have strong opinions about it, and it mostly just is contingent upon whether or not the so-called Shadow Realm is more like a Helfen-style realm, where it's actually like a spirit realm, or if it's just a former physical location in the lands between. Because if it's a former location, then I kind of don't expect to see Godwin, and if it's the Helfen, I don't know whether or not Godwin was actually destroyed, so I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't show up even in that instance. But I could also potentially see, like, because his soul got destroyed, his soul may have gone to the Helfen-style realm, and he could be chilling there. Although I'm just kind of skeptical about it because of like all the Deathroot stuff. I get the vibe that Godwin is God gone. Luminous Azure, nice to see you again. America, the Carians, and the Gek the only context for the word queen? No, so we still have demi-human queens and potentially like royal revenants and whatnot. The term like king and queen seems to be used pretty liberally here. And that's not just like an English thing, by the way. Doggo got. Rip. Okay. Demi-humans, of course, yeah. Alright.
Which was what closed the way to the spirit world and confined the souls of the dead to the lands between, so that they can be absorbed by the Erdtree. However, after looking at everything we saw of the DLC, I am very perplexed.
Oh yeah, and then I got totally distracted by that comment in chat. So yeah, no, I wanted to say pretty much everything Cosmos was saying here was pretty on point. I don't really have anything to disagree with, and I just kind of forgot what he was saying. Oh yeah, like the whole removal of Destined Death. So the comment that I wanted to make about that is, yeah, I think that's a perfectly acceptable theory, but I also think it's important to note that if people do ascribe to certain theories, that oftentimes it also requires going back and reevaluating old theories. So if the Shadow Realm got removed with the so-called removal of Destined Death, that's perfectly fine. But if you choose to believe that Destined Death was removed on the creation of the Erdtree or whatnot, then you would also have to consider when Messmer was born in the timeline in relation to that, and whether or not one believes Messmer to have been a child of Godfrey in America, or Radagon in America, or unknown party and or unknown party. So, that doesn't contradict anything that Cosmos has said here, but I just want to point that out, that sometimes you have to do some revision on some very old ideas in the face of new information, which is pretty hard to do, and it's really easy to take that stuff for granted. So just be warned now before the DLC releases. God won't be in the DLC, Sag. Yeah. Oh, so Doggo, if you probably put a period at the end of a word and then didn't put a space, the Nightbot may have interpreted it as a thing. Yeah, okay, Rift.and antiquated charm. You got wrecked. Yeah, so make sure you use spaces after periods, folks. If Miquella was to do anything with Godwin, it would probably be making sure he's fully dead and not a resurrection. So that could be taken multiple ways, because even if Godwin's soul is gone, his body is still kind of around and still kind of alive and is causing a lot of problems for the lands between. So Miquella wanting to give a full death or a proper death to Godwin could still imply that stuff. So there's a lot of room to work with in one's interpretations there.
However, after looking at everything we saw of the DLC, I am very perplexed at the true nature of this place and its relationship to the lands between. The presence of such a slice of Raya Lucaria Academy is extremely intriguing, and so is this character who, while visually present, through statues we have never actually heard of. There is almost an element of mirroring here going on, even...
Oh yeah, Crunchy, I don't remember if you brought it up in your video, but yeah, the whole idea of the Carian study hall going upside down could probably build into your upside down Erdtree theory pretty readily there.
Putting aside the Erdtree itself. Anyways, we will have to wait and see on that. We now see rapid shots of different locations, and this here is exactly the kind of area that would be hidden away under a cliff invisible from afar. I believe some saw this and thought of a Deathblight swamp, but actually there is no swamp here. The watch...
I don't know about that. I mean, this stuff kind of reminds me of the swamp outside of the Albinorc village and or the Shaded Castle. But I wanted to talk about the little dude he showed us a second here. So I mentioned this in the Discord the other day, but I think this is actually pretty reminiscent of a Hozuki. So the reason why I say Hozuki is because if I said Winter Lantern first, that might give you guys a certain kind of impression and make you feel a certain kind of way. So hold on, let's go ahead and pull it up. Winter Lantern. Chinese lantern. Oh, that's not it. Plant. Okay, here we go. So Chinese lantern plant. These are called Hozuki in Japanese, and that term is what was used for the Bloodborne enemy by the same name. And they got translated as winter lanterns. So this kind of cage looking thing surrounding the fruit or whatnot on the inside just kind of made me, well, this reminded me of the plant, and I knew of the plant from looking into the etymology of the winter lanterns. So as to whatever the hell is going on inside them, I have no idea. We could make jokes that it's the infection from Hollow Knight, so it's all radiant. But yeah, the fact that these things could potentially be infected with Deathbite is very intriguing, because it would have like a lot of consequences. What's the word? I don't know. Anyway, it would bring up a lot of complications in trying to piece together how Deathblight and Deathroot fits into this kind of so-called veiled realm, dislocated realm. I don't know, like this place that has been dislodged from the lands between. So I don't necessarily think it's Deathblight yet, but you know, time will tell, as always. PTSD warning, please. Hey, Ash King. Oh, you retracted your own message. I thought Nightbot got you. Nice to see you again. And happy. Welcome in. From what Floorgeborge can remember, Miquella so far has been hellbent on repairing his predecessor's mistakes. So making Godwin dead in body and soul would be fine with what we know. So I've got a lot of small issues with Miquella just because it seems like my man's has got the ADHD curse because... First of all, he wants to make unalloyed gold to rescue his sister. He also wants to give a true death to his brother. He wants to call in the eclipse. He wants to be part of the Erdtree and become his own thing. And then he also gets absconded into the Shadowlands, and then abandons all that other stuff, to do, So... with eternal youth comes no aging of the prefrontal lobes, apparently. Hi, Bubby. It's okay. You're okay. There's nothing. Mwah. All right. You still hear the Keening song? Yeah, for real. Ashking said, maybe it's just them, but at this moment, the lore of Miquella is the most boring for you. Hope it'll change after the DLC. Yeah, I feel like Miquella's stuff is all over the place, which is a good and a bad thing because it can go lots of interesting places, and wherever it goes will probably disappoint someone, like, assuredly. Miquella got the Velka treatment, somehow responsible for everything. Yeah, if you want to say like the Velka treatment as far as the fans are concerned, that's certainly true. Not necessarily by the game. Drake Tinjum, welcome on in. You suspect Godwin's soul isn't necessarily destroyed because you believe Ronnie only used half of death to perform the death ritual. So the only thing about that for me personally is I tend to be a bit of a literalist as far as the item descriptions are concerned. And so if something doesn't use the equivalent language of it is said or is like thought to be considered, etc., I tend to look at it as a bit of an incontrovertible fact. And we do have a description which says Ronnie died in flesh and then Godwin died in soul. I would need to double check what the exact terminology is there, but I am of the opinion that Godwin is soulless, like the so-called soulless demigods in the Wandering Mausoleums, which we'll check a video out on that topic after this one. Yeah, no, Crunchy's in chat. He's a cool dude. Oh yeah, and if anybody is unfamiliar with Crunchy, he has a YouTube channel as well where he likes to delve into a lot of lore. I watched a couple of his videos on stream. Really good content and a lot of good insights. So, and he's also a big believer in letting people cook for better or worse, whether malign or abundant, or whatever the quote is, the content. It's all fun and games until Miquella Blade of America shows up after Messmer Phase 2, for real though. Yeah, and Escalisi says, unless died in soul means it got sent somewhere, he's gone. And I think that is still possibly a good interpretation, but until we get more on that front, I'm kind of the opinion that Godwin is Gonwin. Alright, going back to the video now.
Of a Deathblight swamp, but actually there is no swamp here. The water is clear and the ground under it seems to be coursing with veins of red and gold, with bright yellow and orange flowers that can also be seen here and here. This is actually very reminiscent of some descriptions of the Crucible of primordial life. The Crucible Knight's armor's veiny design comes to mind, with the 1.0 description of those armors directly highlighting them as conduits seething with the power of Light's Crucible. That is the red-tinged primordial gold. The Crucible in Elden Ring is said to be where all life was once blended together, and is believed by many, including myself, to be the origin of all local life in this world, and was actually what Marika used to create the Erdtree, being often referred to as the Erdtree in its primordial form. Needless to say,
I appreciate all the disclaimers there, because I am like the big I don't know what to call myself here in regard to this. The naysayer? I don't know. That's probably not right. Trend bucker in this kind of context. So anyway, leaving my identification there alone. So the way that I look at the Crucible is very complicated because of the ambiguity afforded in the Japanese text here. I talk about this like a ton on my previous streams. It's a topic that constantly comes up, so I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I've also seen a lot of new names in the chat, so I'll try to give as an abridged version of it as possible, which means I'm going to probably ramble for like another 5 to 10 minutes, so I apologize in advance. But as far as the Japanese descriptions of the Crucible stuff is concerned, okay, we've got the Gilded Great Shield having probably the most impactful mistranslation by my estimation in the game. I should probably do this. Okay, this is probably good. Let me look at it on my OBS to see. Okay, yeah, that should be a good enough size. All right, so the Gilded Great Shield in English says the red tinge in the gold coat. The red tinge in the gold coat mirrors the primordial matter that became the Erdtree, the color of homeward yearning. So, primordial matter becomes the Erdtree can pretty much only be read one way, that there was something before the Erdtree, and that something was a primordial matter. I tend to mentally visualize this as the so-called primordial soup, because like all life got blended or came from the primordial soup, so that makes a lot of sense to me. But the Japanese doesn't quite read that explicitly as far as that interpretation goes. So the Japanese here is more equivalent to the shield's coating imitating the genesis of the Erdtree possesses a red hue. It is the color of reminiscence. So this alone isn't that big of a deal, and it can be compatible with this reading, but the reason why I bring this up kind of becomes more important when we recontextualize what's going on in the Crucible Knight set. I think maybe more specifically the Axe set, but the Axe and Tree set use like the same gauntlets and whatnot. It's not too important. So, as far as the English goes, it says it holds the power of the Crucible of Life, the primordial form of the Erdtree. Now, primordial form of the Erdtree can be taken to mean that there was something before the Erdtree, but it was still kind of the Erdtree. There's this kind of ambiguity in the English, but it makes it sound as though it does like definitively predate the Erdtree. But the Japanese is kind of really awkward here because it doesn't say like primordial form. This actually says more like the original Erdtree, and then it uses this weird comma to show that this noun can be equivalent to this one, or like this noun phrase. So this noun phrase and this noun phrase can more or less be like taken the same way for the most part. So you could be saying that the original Erdtree is more or less like the Crucible of Life, or Life Crucible, whatever you want to call it. So it houses the power of the Crucible of Life. It houses the power of the original Erdtree. So the reason why I bring up the original Erdtree is that it's not original form. It's saying like the Erdtree itself. Oops. So if the original Erdtree is equivalent to the primordial Crucible of Life, then does that necessarily make the Erdtree the Crucible? Or is there actually something else that is similar to the Erdtree but wasn't exactly the Erdtree, and is there a real primordial form? As far as the Japanese goes for all of like the Crucible equipment, it doesn't use primordial form in Japanese. It just has like kind of awkward phrasings, and the Silurius tree is probably a bit better because it's more equivalent to the Crucible Knight armor set, where it just says the Erdtree's origins are closer to life. And origin here is used like the same term as like primordial in the English. That's how they translated it. But you could just always say like original or origin. It's just all a little bit awkward. But because of the Crucible Knight set specifically, original Erdtree to me means it's still the Erdtree. It's not necessarily a different form of the Erdtree. It could be perhaps, but that's kind of where I'm coming from in my interpretation of what the Crucible is. And that has a lot of impacts for understanding the timeline and the sequence of events that I don't want to get into right now. So I'm kind of like the big stumbling block here in making the claim that I don't necessarily think the Erdtree was a primordial soup due to the ambiguity introduced in the Japanese. Now, with all of that being said, as has been the consistent theme throughout this stream, I am not willing to die on this hill. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do get more information which gives a better picture of the overall structure of the Crucible as we head into the shadow of the Erdtree. And that should also be like the last video that we look at for the night, if we even get that far. All right, so like I said, I was going to ramble for a moment there, and now we're done with that. So let me turn back to the chat. Scallies wants to know if Marika looked different before becoming a god, because the Newman starting class looks pretty far from here. That's an interesting point. I wouldn't be surprised if she changed, especially if there's like something else going on with the way she became Radagon that we don't know about, and everything like relating to Marika's mischief. One interesting idea that I've heard for a long time is that Marika could have also been the god of the dragons, and with it being rumored that Lansax could turn into a human, maybe the same could be true of Marika. Maybe she was originally a dragon who turned into, you know, Marika the Eternal with Godfrey, and then became like Radagon essentially in her reign as Elden Lord and God and whatnot. Koi Pop, the 77th, welcome on in. You're running a Crucible Knight build as your DLC player character, so this is of interest to you? Nice. Yeah, I was really thinking that if I did prepare a DLC character, like what kind of character did I want to go into it with? To be honest, I really love like the Godslayer mythos so far, so I'm tempted to do that, but like let's be real here, like the Godslayer garb is kind of dookie looking. So Crucible Knight has been another popular idea that I have considered, but I was actually thinking of doing something perhaps a little bit unorthodox and like maybe doing a confessor style build, like a 2 fingers, like assassin type thing. That seems kind of interesting in my mind's eye for now, and like abusing White Shadow's lure and whatnot. Global Sequence, nice to see you again as always. For real though, imagine if the Great Tree is revealed to be real the whole time in the DLC. I mean, like I've said before, while I do think that all representations of the Great Tree so far have been more or less explicitly linked to the Erdtree, that doesn't preclude the possibility of another tree having existed beforehand. Magical shoujo transformation for Marika? Yeah, for real. Ordova's Greatsword hit so hard. Don't sleep on Siluria's tree. I mean, they have pretty similar arts. Weapon arts. Reality check. Welcome on in. You said Marika has Godfrey children before the baptism, and they're Crucible-like. Radagon, the unclean old part, is born from the baptism, later re-cleansed with Celestial Dew, ready for re-merging with Marika. So there's a lot of points to address there, in that we don't actually know the ordering of the birth of Marika's children, and this gets complicated even further with the addition of Messmer. So leaving the Messmer stuff aside for now, I've wondered for a long time whether Godwin is the firstborn child because he looks more similar to Marika and Godfrey, and whether or not the Omen children came later, or vice versa, and that the Omen children were from like the predetermined so-called Crucible time before the Erdtree, and that once Marika and Godfrey did their thing, they had more human-looking children. But I think even with that interpretation, the one thing that's always bothered me is, why does Godfrey and or America not look like an Omen then? So in some ways, it makes more sense to me that Omen would have come later, after the Erdtree or after America and Godfrey coming onto the scene. But now with all of the stuff with the DLC talking about pre-Erdtree cultures and the lion dancers also like having Omen style horns on the lion garb thing that they're wearing, and then that new reveal of like that Omen looking like dude or lady that we saw earlier at the very beginning of the stream, it really does have me wondering. So with that being said, I have also wondered whether or not the Omen style curse could have been like transmitted into the Land of Shadow. Did the Land of Shadow get separated after the Omen curse hit, if that was like post Erdtree? There's just so many possibilities that it's just kind of like mind-boggling to keep track of them all. Luminous Azure says, the ultimate question we need answered, do we ever have mention of seeing both Radigan and Marika at the same time? I mean, if you want to make the argument that when Radigan has blonde hair when Marika transforms into him, you could say yeah. Dr. N says, at least with Messmer, we don't have to endure it like it was with Yorshka and Felinor just coming out of nowhere 9 years later. You say that, but I mean, just because we've seen Messmer doesn't mean that there aren't others. Emerald Jack 4200, welcome in. I can't just ask people why they don't look like Omen. Why not? I mean, if you believe Dung Eater, it is like the highest form of man, right? And Sarcastic, nice to see you again. Alright, is this gonna play or not? Do I need to
say that it is something exceedingly holy? The Crucible Knights are knights of the Golden Order who served Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and used...
So I would disagree with that. There's nothing explicit which ties them to the Golden Order, but I'm also going to assume that Cosmos is of the opinion that the Golden Order would have started with Marika and Godfrey, which is fine, but it isn't quite that clear, perhaps.
Used the power of the Crucible in combat by manifesting various aspects of living beings. This is the first mention of the Crucible in this video, but be warned, it's gonna be coming up a lot. The player character on this scene seems to be wearing a black feather outfit with almost nothing under, besides some rope and rags, and what looks like, perhaps, a few bones, very reminiscent of the practices of the Ravenmount assassins who imitated death birds.
I've been meaning to double check if that was the Ravenmount cloak, but apparently it's not, so thanks, Cosmos.
Next, we see this seemingly important portrait with this very old and tired man next to a woman who seems to be pregnant. Her hair is black or dark red, and her outfit seems to be like a traditional Amazigh or Turkish, almost nomadic style of clothing, similar to that of the warrior starting class. Finally, we have our first and proper look at the crumbling castle. You will notice that it was around here where we met Pot Havo. There is a lot going on here, so let's start from the top, literally. It seems the castle isn't just crumbling away, it is practically fading away, and it seems to be invaded by dark black roots, while the stone itself is turning to shadows. I do wonder what is going on here, and it might just be the angle, but it almost looks like the top of the castle is almost touching the veil. I wonder if it is fading because this is the border of this realm. The black roots and suspended crumbling rocks will also be reminiscent of Deathroot and Faro Mazula for sure. Next we can see the spiraling towers and pillars we saw around the landscape and near that town in the central area. The facade of the castle makes excessive use of these ancient reliefs.
Yeah, I'm really curious about these, and I wish we had like a better look at them. I obviously don't really think they're going to amount to much, but it's just kind of always been a little bit fun for me to like look at the reliefs and see if there's like any historical parallels, even though like quite often it's not very fruitful. There's just something, I don't know, very alluring to me about it, I suppose. And our Crusader, welcome on in. Hey Winnie, thanks for the £6. I appreciate it. Thanks for the distraction. Excited for the content the DLC will bring. Yeah, thank you. Oh, I could like supers? That's so weird. Waiting for the video to start again. Alright, I probably just need to get out of full screen.
Which can also be found on the arches around the Shadowlands. It seems to me that this civilization...
Asenex asked if it will be the only DLC. Miyazaki has said this is the one that they have planned. They don't necessarily have plans for another, but he did say something to the effect that they don't want to close the door on Elden Ring, so it seems likely, but we don't really know, I suppose.
Was at least at some point...
Alright, Winnie, you have a good night. Thank you.
And here is our first Berserk reference in the DLC. And it seems to be a Wicker Man, which is a Wicker Man. It's a wicker statue used by putting people...
It looks like my internet's screwing around, or hopefully that's not the video.
It seems to be a Wicker Man, which is a Wicker Man. It's a wicker statue used by putting people inside of it and sacrificing them by burning. Miyazaki has said that it was actually a device used in the war that took place in the Shadowlands. We can see the corpses of the unfortunate losers of this war, but also what looks...
Alright, this is annoying me now. I'm gonna refresh the page. 1726 in case it switches.
Here is our first Berserk reference in the...
Alright, gonna fast forward. This should be good if it ever starts. Keith Martin, nice to see you again. I saw your comment before the stream started, but you said the same theories web on repeat for the last month. For real though. I mean, I don't begrudge anybody. We pretty much all are working with the same source material, so it's pretty natural that a lot of this stuff is going to be similar. I will say though that Cosmos's video so far has been very thorough so far. It's pretty impressive. Come on, YouTube.
That it was actually a device used in the...
It's so wonky to me that getting out of full screen starts it.
War that took place in the Shadowlands. We can see the corpses of the unfortunate losers of this war, but also what looks like skinned fire giant faces on its belt and the dragon head sticking out its side. Also a horse. The top edge looks like the wires are forming hands, so I fully expect it to have a grab attack similar to these guys from Dark Souls 1.
Oh no, it's a giant Chaos Eater. I didn't think about that. I just kind of always thought of those things as mobile toilets.
Behind him we can see this Gelmir looking mountain in the back, placing it east of the landmass, and this tall tower that we can only ever spot in the cover art of the DLC. But perhaps the strangest and most notable...
Right, and that's why I thought there were mountains here, but you don't see mountains on that photo, so... yeah, okay.
Worthy thing about this lovely fellow is the open display of what looks like omen horns on its face, which is a perfect segue to the next enemy.
I love this enemy. Doesn't even have to do anything, just the concept. Absolutely adore. But man, it using yellow lightning really trips me up, not gonna lie.
First, it seems this fight is taking place inside the crumbling castle, as we can see those same reliefs and spiraling columns we have noticed earlier in the background. While the light...
Oh yeah, and the new enemy that got shown off today, it makes me think it's probably of the same type of people that pilot this lion costume. So yeah. Reality Check said, it's interesting though probably wrong, but Messmer might have killed the giants when bringing the Age of Fracture, being Radigan's consort or something, instead of killing them in the war before the giants lost. I don't necessarily think so, but... So one thing that's bothered me about the Messmer thing and Miyazaki's interview is that he was asked if he was a demigod or something, and rather than saying yes or no, which would be the most simple explanation, Miyazaki made it a point of saying that he has the same status as a demigod. Now, if America's Carian children became so-called demigods when Radagon wed America, you might be able to apply that logic to the Messmer situation by saying he could be America's child and therefore be of the same status as the demigod children, but not necessarily be a demigod. And if that's the case, you could make the argument that he could be from a union before before Godfrey and Marika, but with him being red of hair and Radagon being red of hair, potentially due to the curse of the giants, or due to a curse of the giants, allegedly, there is a lot of draw into thinking that Messmer could be related to Radagon. But even setting like the issue of Messmer aside, I have wondered for a long time like where exactly Melina fit into things, and or whether or not she's like an actual like true child of Marika, or like an aspect of Marika, or maybe something more equivalent to what Millicent is to Millennia. But none of those kind of thoughts really help identify what's going on with Messmer now, do they? Hey Jack Irish, nice to see you again. Did I see the new boss teaser? I'm assuming you're talking about the enemy with like the two chakram. Yeah, we talked about that at the very beginning of the stream. Crunchy says, Messmer's the child of Marika and Grand Sax, not Marika and Placidusax. Messmer's the Gek orphan that Marika adopted. You're calling it? Okay. Ain't nothing cursed about rolling red locks, baby. Well, it would explain it if he was soulless, wouldn't it? Oh god. Never even thought about that joke until now. Hey Galamoth, nice to see you. Depends how you define demigod. Sometimes it's more of a title. And yeah, that's another good thing to bring up, because we do have some weird dialogue from like Aeneas stating that the demigods are each and all the direct children of Marika, which is kind of like the first tip off that Marika and Radagon are one if Radagon was like their father. But it really bothers me, unironically, that Rykard and Radagon's Great Runes state that they became demigods upon Radagon marrying Marika. I think the Japanese is worded a bit differently. Like, I'm pretty sure like Gaiseki was thrown in there, which says like they became demigods through like their mother's side, essentially, which implies that like Radagon is also Marika and is also their mother. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that too much, because that's like super Pepe, Sylvia type stuff there. Ash King said, Godfrey is also called a demigod in Godric's rune description. You think it's just a title, and all mighty people affiliated with the fingers were called demigods? Oh yeah, that's actually the main reason why I was even bringing up this tangent, but forgot about it. So yeah, the reason why I said Miyazaki not saying that Messmer is necessarily a demigod is kind of a big deal to me is because if he has the same status but is not a demigod, you could still make the argument that he could have been like their firstborn, because Godfrey and his golden lineage are canonically called like the first demigods. So with the whole idea of it being a title, I think there's a strong possibility that that's true. And there's also the possibility that it's like a birthright thing as well. So you could be like a legal demigod and a demigod by blood, perhaps. And I think a lot of it really just comes to legal proximity to the Elden Ring and Marika, essentially. Galamoth said, for all the inhabitants of the lands between knew Renala's kids weren't demigods. It's hard to say like when they became recognized as demigods, because at the very least we do have multiple NPCs referring to the Carian children as like full-on demigods. Like Jaren says that Radahn was the strongest demigod in all the Shattering. Gideon tells us like all the Carian children were demigods, but he also thought Ronnie had a great rune when she arguably doesn't, and I know that's a point of contention because what isn't contentious in Elden Ring lore, but yeah, I don't want to touch that further. Yeah, it's gonna all come back to Godfrey. Key to all of it. For real though. Hey Stella, nice to see you again. Definitely feels more like a title. Yeah, I could buy that. Okay, Boilor, I don't trust you there. Alright. Going back to the video.
Line itself seems to be a reference to traditional Chinese line dancing, as it is puppeteered by 3 or 4 guys inside. I've seen some people think that it was some sort of revenant or grafting at play here, but nope. As you can see, it's 3 dudes in a big coat, and you will always spot the one on head duty using his hands to open and close the mouth. Honestly,
Pinwheel
at this point I feel like the From
2.0.
Software animators are just flexing. The design of the lion itself is incredibly eerie and interesting. Makes it instantly reminiscent of the lion that can be fought in the lands between with omen horns on them, but there is something wrong to its face. And I don't just say that to be mean. There is an obvious second human-like row of teeth in there, and his mane is closer to human hair. He also looks like he almost has eyebrows. His face seems to be off and squashed in, and it's when you put them side by side that you can really tell the similarities with the Misbegottens. Very strange and off-putting, but perhaps not unexpected, since the Misbegottens are creatures believed to have been punishment for making contact with the primordial crucible, and omen horns in general are vestiges of the primordial crucible that can also grow on the human body sometimes. Later in the video there is a...
So Jack asks, what if Messmer and Marika are siblings? So, alright, I'm going to walk you on a journey for a rug pull, so I'm just giving you guys a bit of a heads up here. So, in the trailer, we presumably have Messmer saying, Mother, why wouldst thou sanction lordship to one so bereft of light, or something along those lines. So he's dressing somebody as Mother. Most people will take that Mother to mean Marika, and if Messmer is of the same status as the demigods, that would essentially imply that he would be a child of Marika to some capacity as well. But with Enia saying that all the demigod children are each and all the direct offspring of Marika, and Godfrey being called a demigod, does that mean he was an offspring of Marika? Did Marika, do a bit of incest before she did a little bit of self-cest? And if so, could Messmer be Marika's brother? Maybe. So that's kind of the rug pull. I mean, I obviously don't really believe that. And I think like Enia's dialogue isn't meant to imply that Godfrey is actually a direct child of Marika. I think within the context of Enia's speech, she's pretty clear that she's talking about the Shard Bearers more specifically. So don't get the wrong takeaway from that. You wonder if the lion wearing omens are some kind of precursor to the godskins? Oh, that's an interesting idea, just in terms of wearing something else's skin to gain their power. Maybe. And then we could always point back to one of the top 2 descriptions in Elden Ring, soap, with soil covering the outside, eventually seeps in. Soiling one's very spirit. I missed that. I missed the first part of that description. Filth covering the outside eventually seeps into the inside. Eventually soiling one's very spirit. Anyway, you all know what I'm saying. What if Marika was her own mother? So Crunchy, I can't tell if you're shitposting, but I will answer that as honestly as I can here, because I think that's a very fascinating question. When we look at one of the cut content items, which is like an umbilical cord, which seemed to wrap in on itself. If anybody is familiar with Saint Trina, the content creator, she was looking at a lot of stuff with like Celtic knots, and she brought up how allegedly that umbilical cord item would allow people to swap genders and whatnot. That it just didn't get implemented for whatever reason, we don't know. But the reason that item fascinated me in particular is because I think the overall layout of that umbilical cord is very reminiscent of the shawl behind Marika. And with the way that it wraps in on itself, it could imply that both mother and child are the same organism. And so mother and child are the same. So you could potentially come up with that argument that Marika is her own mother, as much of a paradox as that may seem. But of course, like, we could always say like god magic, that she may have like become her own mother after she became a god or got some like crazy powers, or maybe that's just like a power of the Newman with their whole ability to kind of like have multifaceted beings, perhaps, as Miyazaki may have hinted at. We just don't really know the full details there. So like I said, couldn't tell if you were shitposting, but I do think that's unironically a valid question. So all right.
The courtyard, we can tell, is in the same castle, where we see statues of lions with omen horns, and they also have the weird misbegotten-like short face of the puppet. Combining this with the depiction of the Wicker Man's face, it seems like in the Shadowlands, these features are not actually disdained, but in fact respected and put forward, which actually lines up perfectly with what we know from the main game, where it was said that these features became hated as the Golden Order society advanced, but were seen as divine in ancient times, most likely due to their ties to the Crucible, the source of all life. When questioned on this boss, Miyazaki expressed that both the lion dance and the area were representative of a culture that existed before the Erdtree. In my videos,
and yeah, that's the thing that's like really tripped me up so far, because the whole Omen thing potentially being pre Erdtree is a theory that I've had, or it's something that I thought that's been possible for a while, but I just don't really have very strong feelings on it. And even with this bit of information, I still do question whether or not the Shadowlands could have been still influenced by the history of the actual lands between, and therefore it could have undergone like the same kind of transformations and whatnot. Even if these things were originally pre-Erdtree, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were separated from everything, you know, if that makes sense. Anyway. Did I say something about America being related to dragons? So yeah, there's a lot to go with that, but I will just start with like a kind of rhetorical question, but, you know, trying to make a point with it, that if Malekith is the beast clergyman of Farum Azula, and Farum Azula was built as a mausoleum to enshrine and honor the ancient dragons, and Malekith is also Marika's Shadowhound beast, and is also therefore younger than her because like he came from her as being her shadow and whatnot, then what does that say about Marika? And Stella says everyone is Marika in the lands between, for real though. You love the everyone is everyone meme that's been growing. I mean, can you really blame anybody anymore with Marika and Radagon being confirmed, and between like not only just that, we also have like a lot of extra things to consider with Hayata and Arena, Shabibi with Yura, all of that. I wouldn't be surprised if we have another instance of that in the DLC to some degree.
Speculating on what we will see in the DLC, I claim that the arches we could see in the landscape were actually Numen architecture, based on their similarities to the ancient dynasty reliefs. Now, we see so much more of these reliefs in this castle, which we know was built by the same group as the arches throughout the Shadowlands, but a few more things came to my attention. First, the robe worn by the lion puppet actually has an interesting element added to it, which are these roots or branches growing from its neck and all over the robe, and are actually a perfect match with the growths we could see on none other than Elden John.
Oh, that's a pretty good observation. I haven't seen nor heard that yet. Yeah, I'm still going to be reserved about it, but, you know, I'm definitely open to hearing more.
The prime figure depicted in the ancient dynasty ruins of the Numen. And wouldn't you know it, a long time ago when I was data mining for some of the texture of the reliefs in the ancient dynasty, I had found this texture of a lion's face that looks like a Chinese guardian dog. And though it wasn't used in the game back then, guess who I found over here? The reason Numen presence is so important and exciting is that they are probably the most mysterious and important race to the narrative of Elden Ring. Marika, the central figure of the history of the lands between as we know it, is a Numen.
I've said Shadowbound.
And so are the Black Knife Assassins, and in some capacity the Nox of the Eternal Cities. The Ancient Dynasty are the progenitors of the Eternals, and as such, could be the original Numen who came from another world. On the other hand though, the obvious beast presence in their culture...
So yeah, anyway, with Cosmos talking about the Ol and Erd dynasties, I'm not necessarily certain that those dudes were Numen or whatnot. Well, I know that's a popular theory. There's just been nothing explicit. We're also told that even if this stuff is pre-Erdtree, that Marika, quote-unquote, alighted to the Shadowlands, which implies that she wasn't native-born. So could the Numen have settled here before Marika arrived? Potentially. We just don't really have the full details there.
And the boss using what looks like a ground-type attack, for lack of better word, is very reminiscent of Bishop's spells and so is the use of lightning, another tie to Farum Azula. So are they Farum Azula related or Ancient Dynasty related?
Alright, chat, quick. What Pokemon type is good against both rock and electric? I know grass is good against rock. Is ground good against rock? I wouldn't be surprised. So we need like a real... I guess he said ground type ability. So we need something good against ground and electric or rock and electric? Ground, okay.
Or both, even. At this point, it's way too early to say, but it's interesting to take apart all these visual pieces and try to list our options. But before I move on, I will be bringing up one more connection to the Numen. Later in the trailer, we see this otherworldly scene. What you can find in the background of the landscape are what looks like ships. Ships that look very similar to the shapes depicted in Ancient Dynasty obelisks that retell their history. Myself and many others have interpreted this as being the arrival of the Numen to this land, or to this world. And considering in this DLC, we will be digging into Marika's past, a Numen, and the Shadowlands being described as the place Marika first descended, it seems very likely to me that all these similarities are not coincidences. I am at this point of course still speculating, but I am fairly confident that this DLC will shed some light into Numen lore and origins.
Hopefully. So yeah, steel type also works. Alright, thank you guys.
Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?
And here comes the star of the trailer. Messmer the Impaler is the cover character of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, and straight away there is a lot that jumps to the eyes. The Drake Knight design similarities, the two red serpents, the red hair, the use of dark flames, and his eyes. The synopsis of the Shadow of the Erdtree says, "The Land of Shadows, a place obscured by the Erdtree where the goddess Marika first set foot. A land purged in an unsung battle, set ablaze by Messmer's flame. It was to this land that Miquella departed, divesting himself of his flesh, his strength, his lineage, of all things golden." In the cover, we can see Messmer sitting on one of the demigod thrones we find at the Erdtree's entrance, and during the trailer he mentions his mother, asking if she would really allow one without light to become lord. He is most likely talking about the Tarnished, who have lost the grace of gold and their goal of becoming Elden Lord. Then the one who would want such a thing to happen would be Marika, making Messmer her child and a demigod. Well, we don't have to guess too much because Miyazaki has directly confirmed this in an...
I thought there was almost like an audio skip there. Yeah, so Reality Check has an interesting comment in chat. I don't know how I feel about it, but they've said when he says mother, he talks to the snake maybe. And many people have certainly wondered whether or not Messmer could be related to like the snake god, either referenced in Mount Gelmir or potentially the giant snake that Rykard was eaten by. But... some have also thought like there would be like a snake god above the thing that ate Rykard, but yeah. Don't know how I feel. I'm kind of more of the opinion that it would be Marika, but you know, we'll find out in a little more than a month.
Interview. Messmer is one who is on the same standing as the demigods, Marika's children, and can be called a child of Marika. One thing I find interesting is that he's not saying Messmer is a demigod and a child of Marika. Rather, the way he words it makes it sound like there is almost a caveat there. And honestly, there should be, because Messmer seems to have been playing a huge part of Marika's campaign in the Shadowlands. This is different from even her genocide.
Crunchy says those can both be true if Marika's a snake. You got me.
Of the Fire Giants, as that would come after the birth of the Erdtree and her becoming a vessel of the Elden Ring. But this world is where Marika came to be a god, where the war fought for that right took place. Chronologically speaking, the events we are going to learn about and the purging of the land that Messmer led predate everything relating to the Golden Order and the Erdtree. We don't even know if Godfrey was in the picture or of Radagon's situation at the time. And Messmer's red hair and affiliation with fire certainly doesn't help.
So this doesn't really matter to what Cosmos is talking about here, but one thought that I had kind of recently was when you use the Mimic Veil, you like put it over your eyes, and it's a veil obviously, so that's not a surprise, but it's kind of worn like a crown, and if that allows you to change your shape, I wondered if part of the way Marika would change shape would be like removing her crown and becoming like Radagon and whatnot. Obviously, that doesn't work out super well with the final cutscene, or like not final cutscene, but like the boss battle transition cutscene, because I don't think she has a crown on, and she doesn't like physically take it off to Sailor Moon style transform into Radagon. But it was just kind of a something that came into mind right now, because there seemed to be a bit more symbolism with crowns and just like the kind of bramble briar Celtic knot looking like thing that Marika wears. I've wondered if that is what appears on Messmer's cloak. So there's the possibility that Messmer could have been a husband to Marika, but I don't like it if that were to be the case, because I think we have something which says Godfrey was her first husband and Radagon her second, or maybe it was just that Radagon became her second husband or something like that. But that might have also just been NPC dialogue, and then therefore could be subject to error by lack of that NPC's knowledge, I suppose.
And Messmer's red hair and
Thank you,
affiliation with
Galamoth.
fire certainly doesn't help. So I do wonder if Messmer is a child of Marika in the same way Melina is Marika's daughter. After all, he even has the fire affinity and the closed left eye. Technicalities aside, this would make Messmer a sort of firstborn of Marika amongst the demigods of the Age of the Erdtree. And behind him, we can actually find a unique statue of Marika, where she is swaddling and holding a baby. The line, "Eland."
And obviously we don't know if that's Marika, and that's a pretty common theory, because like if he's talking to Mother, it would make sense that he could be referencing that statue above him. Some people have theorized that that statue of what could be Marika cradling that child might also be what's depicted on the abductor virgins, because the abductor virgins also cradle a child, and the abductor virgins also have like snakes coming out of them, but many people believe them to have been built by Rykard for a number of reasons. They're all affiliated with Raya Lucaria and those towers, as opposed to strictly Leyndell type stuff, although we do have two in Leyndell by the Fortified Manor. So anyway, it's just kind of weird that they're all over the place, and more specifically, how many there are in like the Volcano Manor and Raya Lucaria, if they weren't Carian related, I suppose. What is the Great March conquering or celebrating? So the Great March is when all of the Tarnished were led out of the lands between with Godfrey, essentially. Doesn't that statue have the same swirl behind it, or no? The same swirl as Marika? It's hard to tell because it's super dark, and people have like artificially raised the levels. Oh, so like this thing, this shawl is different. It's kind of more like akin to like a baldachin, perhaps. Maybe he's like on a bed.
Of Marika amongst the demigods of the Age of the Erdtree. And behind him, we can actually find a unique statue of Marika.
Oh, actually, no, you're right. That is the shawl of her. Okay. I don't think I saw it like that. Yeah, no. Okay, I'll definitely more confident saying that that's Marika then. Okay. And I think Crunchy said the arm bracelet corresponds to pictures of Marika. Yeah, I think you're right now that you mention it. Okay. Thank you, chat. Appreciate that. Do I think there will be a new weapon type that is beyond colossal weapons, something even bigger? I doubt it. And if so, I would be very disappointed that it wouldn't include the Bolt of Grand Sax. Maybe we'll get the Bolt of Grand Sax.
Where she is swaddling and holding a baby. The line, "A land purged in an unsung battle, set ablaze by Messmer's flames," makes it sound like his existence and his accomplishments have been put under a veil and hidden away, just like the whole of the Shadowlands, which could be a callback to the Nameless King, Gwyn's firstborn from Dark Souls, who was excised from the annals of history for siding with the dragons. However, the Nameless King's exile...
I will not have this Nameless King defender in the stream. No, he lost the annals of history. It's all written down, and he lost it.
Was a result of...
And for anybody who doesn't actually know Dark Souls lore, that's all a joke based off of translation stuff. So, yeah.
Treachery. Could Messmer be the same? And actually, yes, that is very possible, as in the base game of Elden Ring, the gladiators of the arena wore serpent-themed armor, as the spectators reveled in watching them getting beaten and bruised. That is because the serpent was seen as a traitor to the Erdtree, though many people jumped to the association with Rykard, who did feed himself to the Great Serpent and openly declared war on the Erdtree. That explanation actually never made sense, as the gladiators were a thing only during Godfrey's age when the arenas were still active, long before Rykard would go down his path, and the serpent's traitor to the Erdtree, though we didn't know at the time, could have been a reference to Messmer. And the serpent is certainly his symbol. In the collector edition cover, we can see the sigil, which is very probably the sigil of Messmer's faction.
And so this is something that I found out a couple weeks after the trailer came out. Somebody made a post, I don't remember who, so forgive me. They pointed out that impaling is also related to heraldry, and so I guess I could probably just pull up the Wikipedia. I know I've done that before on a stream. Impalement heraldry. Sweet. Okay, so as far as like the crests go of a coat of arms and whatnot, the Baron side is on the dexter side, which means the right side as you wear it, and the feminine side, femme, is sinister, which is Latin for left. And so the the side of the crest would go on the right side, or more like the husband. The husband side goes on the right side, and then the wife is on the left if you are wearing it. So this would be the wife's side, and this would be the husband. Sorry for being so redundant. And I obviously think like the snake and looking fire thing is representative of Messmer's fire, but this kind of braid looking like thing could be potentially related to America, ? Which is kind of why I made the offhanded comment earlier that it might represent that I made the offhanded comment earlier that Messmer could have potentially been a prior spouse of some sort to America, but we don't have the particulars, and I also wouldn't like that because I'm pretty sure something calls Radagon like the second husband. Anyway, I don't remember if there's anything to talk about the bottom in the coats of arms super well, because it's been a while since I looked at it. All right, so just like a really quick scan, I'm not seeing anything too relevant, but anyway, heraldry is pretty crazy. I should probably like study it a bit more sometime, because a lot of that stuff does get shown off in FromSoft games. Hey Tony, nice to see you again, and Bard of Mind.
But also fire scorch in the ground, a flame reminiscent of dragon communion, and a circle knot, which I have actually no idea what it's supposed to symbolize, but we can see it being used.
Oh yeah, since he said he had no idea, I suppose I should just also show off a picture of America. Opening, oops. Is it this one, or do I need the story trailer? I think it's the story trailer. Okay, no. Yeah, so this right here, like, I don't know if that's supposed to be what we see on the thing here. Let's back it up. So I don't think it like looks perfect, but it's kind of sus. I don't know how you guys feel about it in chat. So like, I don't fully buy it, but you know, it's got the hamster churning the wheel inside my mind. And Galamoth said the caduceus is often related to heraldry. You don't know if I said that. No, I actually didn't bring up the caduceus. I think I just like caressed it with my mouse. But yeah, no, we've got like the caduceus 2 snake thing also going along it, and I forget the significance of that symbol. Yo, Jack, could you just like stop saying stupid shit like that? It's like the second time. Well, technically the third time now.
I have actually no idea what it's supposed to symbolize, but we can see it being used to tie together the Wicker Giant. This crest, though it is hard to see, can also be found on the ground of his boss arena and on the banners of who I am pretty sure are Messmer's knights and soldiers. And in this screenshot we can see them patrolling with the Wicker Man, who I would assume probably harbors the same flames as Messmer. His soldiers are actually a good bit different from the ones found in the lands between. They use axes and round shields, and their armor design gives them a slightly more Nordic look. In this screenshot, we can actually see that the pattern on their boots matches extremely well with the style found on Godfrey's armor.
Yeah, I'm actually really impressed he made that connection, because it took me a decent amount of searching to like see like what scale type equipment matched him, and it took me a while to stumble upon Godfrey's set.
Combination with the use of the axe, the Shadowlands being most likely where we will find the Crucible, and the Crucible Knights being Godfrey's first warriors, I do wonder what sort of presence he had here and what role he played. In the trailer, we can hear this NPC say,
They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of a war.
which further brings attention to the conflict that took place here around Marika's ascension to godhood. The age before the Erdtree was governed by the beasts and dragons, and they have always stood by the idea that for Marika to become a god, she must have taken her godhood by force from them. I highly recommend you go check out my video on the Glowmite Queen and the birth of the Golden Order, as it tackles this very specific topic and the war Marika waged on the dragons and their queen for godhood before the DLC gives away the answer for good. As for Messmer himself, he seems to embody many aspects of dragon communion and dragon hunting. His design is instantly reminiscent of the Drake Hunter armor set, and he seems to possess dragon communion eyes. His two red snake.
So, our Crusader said maybe the Shadowland is or are the Badlands. I think that's an interesting idea. As far as like vibe checks go, I feel like that doesn't track for me personally, but despite that, I think it's an interesting idea because Messmer seems to have some kind of familiarity with the Tarnished, and maybe other Tarnished could have like contacted Miquella to like come through the Shadowlands or whatnot, because I think Miyazaki hinted at that we've got like other people doing the same thing we are, which is kind of annoying, kind of similar to like how Alexander and or Bernal get into Fair Missoula, or how so many other Tarnished just willy-nilly go on up to Altus Plateau when it's supposed to have been closed off. At least the Millicent's quest kind of makes sense, because you can like literally summon her to help you go through the little pass. But anyway, it's not too important. What point was I making with that? Oh yeah, the Badlands. So if Messmer is familiar with the Tarnished and they've been coming through, is that because that's where some of the Tarnished got sent when they were exiled from the lands between? And if this is the Badlands, is this where like Godfrey / Horaloo was impaled by like 30 spears in the intro cutscene? That's kind of something that's always been very fascinating and kind of hilariously frustrating at times when you get like this super badass character in a piece of media, and then when you meet that character, they're in kind of like an unlikely situation if you really like stop and think about it. So we've got a couple examples of this. We've got what's his face in Berserk meets Guts in a prison, whereas like this dude can like he can what is a prison to this dude? Who the hell captured this guy? You know, like if Guts can only barely manage to like wound him. Anyway, that's one example. And then like Horaloo and Sirash being just impaled and like crucified, essentially lynched, hung upon this tree looking like thing. I'm like, who the hell beat Horaloo? Obviously, I think it was like more of a numbers game, but stuff like that is just always like really funny to me. Hey, Jonah S., nice to see you again. Yeah, you think they're inverted worlds, kind of like in Link's Awakening. It's kind of always funny to me, like what Zelda game somebody is going to reference when we talk about the Shadowlands. Because honestly, like my first thought was of in Link to the Past, when you go into like the realm of darkness and whatnot, but yeah. Oh, you did say Link to the Past after. It's all good. Yeah. Okay.
Have sprouted draconic-like wings, so maybe they were also partaking in communion with him. By the way, you can see the snakes coming out of his torso in some angles. Ew. But the fire really is his.
He just said ew.
And this fire is super annoying because while it looks like many other fires in Elden Ring, it's not exactly like any of them, and in fact seems to combine their different aspects. First,
so I was talking to Moxie Watts the other day, and I sent her the silly like Holy Trinity comparison picture. And I feel like after this DLC drops, it's going to require a 4th axis. Give me a second for my stupid Windows thing to load up. Okay. So I don't know who came up with this original image, which I like. Wait, what? Okay, why did that take so long to... Okay, anyway. So I don't know who came up with this image originally, so I had to like go back and make it myself because I couldn't find it again. So at the top left here, we have Destined Death, linked to Black Flame, linked to Ghost Flame, linked back to Destined Death. So Destined Death is not Black Flame, which is not Ghost Flame, which is not Destined Death, but Destined Death is death, Black Flame is death, Ghost Flame are death, and now we have the frickin' Flames of Messmer, so this is going to require an extra little corner here to try to make all this work, I feel. And who just came back into chat? Crimson, nice to see you again, as well as, where was he? Gregory, nice to see both of you again. Thank you. All right, Luminous, you have good luck with your playthrough there, and you just got a Series X? Nice. So you got to do some work getting ready for that DLC. Nice. Any idea what build you're going to go with yet, or no? And hey, Hilko, nice to see you too. The Half-Wheel Curse Mark of Death? That's still Destined Death territory, technically, because it comes from the Rune of Death.
First, the fire emerges of some sort of shadow or darkness. It is vivid red and instantly recognizable as the fire of Destined Death, which would perfectly fit the setting of the Shadowlands actually. However, the difference is ever so slight, with there being strands of darkness which almost look like runes. But when his flame grows, it starts to take an orange and yellow color, which puts it closer to the fire of the giants. But still it retains the dark and red element, which basically makes it impossible for me to confidently say on what kind of power he is drawing from. There seems to be also an element of godskin design to him. The serpent association, the lanky design, the bracelets, his fire that kinda looks like Destined Death, which could be interpreted as the fully powered god-slain Black Flame the godskin could have used in the past, and the obsidian on his spear, which is used to channel Black Flames. And talking about his spear, which he probably partially owes his title to, it actually looks oddly similar to Mogwin's trident, another hidden unsung child of Marika, who also uses his own kind of fire, Blood Flame, which kinda also has similarities to Messmer's fire.
And these are all excellent observations here by Cosmos. I'm impressed, especially with him like talking about the bracelets and the little bit of obsidian on Messmer's spear especially. Yep. Stuff that I would bring up as well. So, hey, howdy, how's it going? I enjoyed Hollow Knight, thanks for asking, and good luck with your run if you're still working on that. It's all good, Jack. I appreciate that. And Luminous is going to do a full holy build. It's going to be torture. I have a feeling it's going to be useful for the Shadowlands. You could always go hybrid. Holy's actually really strong in Elden Ring, especially if you just put in like the smallest amounts of Arcane, because then you could make use of the Dragon Communion and stuff. It's also really good for bonk builds because it gives you access to like most of the buff abilities. So yeah, don't sleep on Holy. It's really not that much of a meme. So, and yeah, somebody had mentioned like a sleep build. I do hope that we get more like buff options for the DLC, expanding on like soporific abilities, sleep abilities, and also like Black Flame, because the stupid Black Flame incantation that enchants your blade only lasts like what, 6 or 7 seconds. It's near on useless. So hopefully we'll get more of that. Actually, it'd be really cool if we get more infusions too. Oh man, could you imagine getting a wet blade that you could use either like sleep stuff or Black Flame stuff? That would be... Hey, what are you getting? Okay, you're fine. Sorry. That would be pretty great. Alright, I'm gonna go back to the video.
And obviously the fire and snake theme is reminiscent of Rykard. And now look, I'm starting to see things in the landscape from Volcano Manor. It's like this guy is not real. He's almost like a blend of a bunch of shady demigod stuff all combined into one. And depending on what we will learn of the true nature of the Shadowlands, Messmer's origin and the potential presence of the Crucible, it might very much be thematically and visually purposeful by From Software. Maybe he wields a sort of primordial fire or something, who knows. But there is one more thing I would like to talk about in regard to Messmer's fire. Back when the original teaser for DLC was released, the first thing that came to mind when looking at the landscape was just the sheer abundance on display, which many equated to something having to do with Miquella, as he represents abundance while his sister is rot and decay. But now, we know that this land was actually scorched by Messmer's fire, which makes the abundance kind of odd. Or does it? Fire is often used to cleanse a land and make it fertile again. This creates almost a cyclical relationship to each of the things embodied by Miquella, Malenia, and Messmer, who could be interchanged with Melina here too. From Software has touched upon this very narrative and theme before multiple times, be it in Dark Souls or even Elden Ring, sometimes more overtly than others, like in the Ashes of Ariandel DLC, and potentially now with the Shadow of the Erdtree. As for Messmer's motivation and role in the DLC, it seems like he is acting as a ruler of sorts in the Shadowlands. In this very blurry concept art, we can see a statue of Marika.
My man really did enhance, like, I saw that stuff, but I was like, I'm not gonna try to zoom in that far, but the mad lad did it. Okay, that's crazy. All right, Gregory, sorry, I answered your question in my head, but not out loud. You said, aren't black flames technically incantations built by heretical sorcerers for the killing of gods that didn't align with their own views? So, the short answer is no, but there's a lot of nuance that goes into that. So I don't think you could call the Godskin Apostles sorcerers. And you know, this is me being a little bit pedantic, just so like everyone's on the same page here, because like the terminologies do matter, I feel, for these games. So sorry for like being so pedantic about it at times, but sorcerers tend to use like intelligence based stuff and like spells, whereas the God Flame stuff is incantation based and all like faith based. So that's kind of one big difference, and we're never told that they're actually like heretical. And because they are from a time in which the rune of death like still existed, that could ostensibly put them before the current order. So they might have just been like part of like the so-called original order, for lack of a better term. Or, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be argued about that, and I don't want to get into the particulars because it'll just like go like it'll like take us too far astray here. But as far as like the Godskins incantations being used for killing gods that didn't align with their own views specifically, that's certainly an interpretation, but we don't actually have too much info about them and why they did what they did. But the most important thing to mention in regard to them being like related to the powers of death and death is that through one of the Godskin incantations, one of the Black Flame incantations, we're told that once the Glowmite Queen was defeated and Destined Death was sealed, that the power of the Black Flame went away. So there does seem to be a correlation, if not a causal link, between the Rune of Death / Destined Death's removal from the ring and the source of the Black Flame's power. But, yeah. Galamoth has wicked insomnia, so sleep builds offend you. Why? Because you can't get sleep? Or is it because you're immune to them in real life?
Missing its head. And this sort of vandalism makes me lean even more towards the idea that Messmer...
Is it missing its head, or is this just because it's like so low res? Wait, yeah, I almost feel like this could be like a Rorschach thing. Oh, maybe it is missing its head after all. Because if this is the arm... I was almost going to say that this almost looks like a fox head, but I'm like, that's just like the background here. Yeah, I wouldn't trust this too much, but if it does end up being a headless, that's going to be pretty cool. And very fascinating that Messmer would still refer to Marika as mother, but then go around like beheading her.
Completely turned his back on the Erdtree.
Well, if that is Messmer, there's also like other forces at play, but I don't know, like maybe Messmer has ended up controlling most of the Shadowlands, but there does seem to be some interfactional conflict because of like the Wicker Man and whatnot. So I don't know.
He also seems to be aware of Marika's plan to put the Tarnished on the Elven throne but it seems like he wants to kill us based on this quote from this trailer.
Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame.
What's also interesting here is that we know that in order to enter the Shadowlands, Miquella divested himself not only of his body, effectively he died, but also everything golden. His supposed identity in the world of dreams being Saint Trina, which is purely associated with silver, lines up with this. And so potentially it seems that Messmer will also stand as an obstacle to Miquella too. Next, we get a quick look at the new weapon.
And so this ties into what I was talking about earlier on stream, where Messmer's knowledge of the Tarnished and then being like stripped of gold and whatnot is very fascinating to me, because it could imply that whatever happened to the Shadowlands could have happened either during or after Godfrey was exiled from the Lands Between. So, yeah. Jack Irish thinks that Messmer could have a piece of destined death. I don't know how I feel about that, because we're told Malekith had the Rune of Death and Ronnie stole a fragment of it, but we're not told of any other fragments, which doesn't mean that they didn't exist. It's just all that kind of like storytelling bothers me just because of how messy it is, which isn't to say that like FromSoft hasn't done that in the past, because all I'm thinking about when I mention stuff like this perpetually is Filianor and Yorshka and how they just came out of left field in Dark Souls 3. So yeah.
Weapons and spells we can find in the DLC. But before talking about the new gameplay stuff, I want to bring your attention to these enemies over here. Again, we can see a bunch of omen horns growing over their faces, and the area they are in is the same as the one I pointed out earlier in this video as having something to do with the Crucible, as you can tell by the red gold vein.
Yeah, so I think that right there is a bit of a wild claim, but let's let him cook.
On the ground and walls, as well as the flowers and overall lighting of the area. The presence of these horned enemies further reinforces the affiliation to this place to the Crucible, and in their hand they are holding something very interesting, a sort of candle tree which is reminiscent of a design of a shield found in the base game, which coincidentally is in the cave that literally has all things death themed crammed into it. The shape
I didn't realize that. So okay, that's the cave with Necromancer Garrus, I think. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't put that together in my mind. Messmer has the rune of being knocked out? Okay. Why did Melanus set us to sleep and then put us in going to Crumbling Fair Missoula? I couldn't exactly tell you. I mean, Ronnie also puts the player character to sleep. Well, no, she puts Kale to sleep, I guess. Yeah, is that Sage's Cave? Yeah, I know where it is on the map. I'm just pretty bad at remembering names sometimes. Because it's got like the two bosses, so you can fight the invisible Black Knife Assassin in the other boss room there. And yeah, Emerald Jack does say you can burn it by yourself. Sort of, because you do kind of need the Frenzy Flame's aid at that point, but you're not entirely wrong there.
It is also similar to the Helfen Steeple, which mentions a lamp wood. But perhaps the most important part here is looking a bit closer at the material it is made.
Alright, yeah, the entire reason I wanted to stop the video, I forgot about. So yeah, with the new dude that got shown off today on Twitter, it's pretty much the exact same design as these things almost, so they might be related. I don't necessarily know if this location is specifically next to the swamp. We have almost like a catacomb door going on over here, which is, perfectly fine. But I've also wondered whether or not these things are related to the pseudo Winter Lantern enemy that I brought up earlier because of the horns. So, yeah.
Made of, it looks like gold crystals. And if we go forward a bit, you will see this guy in what is probably a boss cutscene, who is this guy from the painting earlier, impaled with the same gold crystallized ember, which is also of a similar shape as the candle tree held by those enemies. In this scene, we are probably seeing one of the new weapon types, the throwing daggers. Actually, even in the previous shot, if you paid attention to the moveset of the character, you will see him using the dual blades with inverted grips, which was...
Yeah, that took me a kind of embarrassing amount of time to notice that the swords wielded there are the reverse grip blades, but they actually look pretty cool and not as much of a meme as I thought they'd be. I'm kind of curious to see how they'll turn out. Oh yeah, and that was the other comment that I was going to make in relation to like, oh, what builds are you guys going to use? Because I feel like whatever ideas we have in our minds now might just get thrown out the window with whatever cool ass weapons we'll see in the DLC.
Was confirmed by Miyazaki as one of the 8 new categories of weapons added to the DLC. Not new weapons, but new weapon categories. Of the 8, Miyazaki mentioned the reverse grip swords, dueling shields, great katanas, a new type of big sword, which didn't really make much sense in the translation, and I would guess these daggers and martial art weapons. The enemy he is fighting seems to be made out of shadow and covered in them. This is similar to the enemies found in the base game in the hero's graves. In the base game, you couldn't hurt them until you shone this special golden light on them, while in the Shadowlands, you are not bound with that restriction. But it seems we might get some context or even lore on what those shadow enemies were. Maybe we couldn't hurt them.
The idea that these things could be in the Shadow Realm is very fascinating. I know Cosmos didn't quite say it that way, but I also didn't think about this, to be fair, so... Yeah, don't they also gain forms when they go into the light? I'm going to be curious to see how this works real quick.
Because they were not actually...
that's what I thought. The shadow goes away. So that dude does seem a bit more distinct with the fact that he stays that color. Anyway, all that being said, it just kind of reminds me of like the Mad Ones in Bloodborne or more spectral type enemies. And in FromSoft games, like spectral type enemies tend to bleed like this black misty thing which came out of it. Koi Pop says, don't go in committed to anything. Optimization can wait until after the credits. Indeed. Florgeborg has thrown out all of their build ideas already. The Crucible Knight calls to you. Nice. Did he say great katanas? Yeah. I would need to double check the interview because I don't remember what all things he listed. So I'm assuming it'd probably be something more equivalent to like a Nodachi. But yeah.
Present in the same realm as the lands between until we shine that golden light of the Erdtree. The weapon he is holding is actually the cleaver used by the Misbegottens, and he is wearing rags with shackles on his ankles. Since both seems to be treated like slaves, I do wonder if there is more of a connection there. The area is the...
Yeah, I've wondered whether or not this dude could be like a misbegotten before it became fully misbegotten, but I honestly have no idea. Cosmos had mentioned the shackles. I kind of feel like they somewhat resemble the thorns that like the guilty people wear, but we don't have anything like that in the base game just yet. And the fact that it does have like the misbegotten cleaver is just unsettling for me for some reason.
The same architecture as the crumbling fading castle where we fight the lion dance enemy, but one thing is for sure is that this culture really loves their spirals. Here we are back to the Crumbling Legacy dungeon. We already talked about this footage earlier, but now we can talk about the spell, which looks like from the colors and butterfly motifs might be perhaps related to Miquella St. Trina. The enemies here are also shadows like from the previous shot. Here we are inside either one of these two legacy dungeons from the architecture, and it looks like they are under the control of Messmer's troops, as we can see his crest and their banners around the area. Also, this knight has...
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be Messmer's crest, because I feel like something back there looked a bit different. Okay.
This very cool...
Maybe it is, I can't tell.
Which I wonder if it is another new...
Yeah, I just felt like it was too pixelated. Maybe he found like a 4K version of the video and it's a little bit better for him, but I didn't.
Weapon category. The player character here is using some sort of martial arts moveset and is wearing this interesting new confessor-like set. We can basically see the same scene in this screenshot and it looks like it might be the same armor, just altered without the cape and the hat, as we see this exact same crest on the hip of both characters. But it can also be found on this dueling shield the player was using against Messmer. So I want...
Yeah, and I feel like I've seen that before. That might be on something like related to the Lord Sworn stuff, but I can't recall, but it, yeah, anyway.
I wonder if it represents a completely new faction we are not aware of. One other thing I would like to point out here is the absurd amount of tall spears all over the place, which I don't think I have seen any of the soldiers or knights use. In some
Oh yeah, so that was one of the weapon types listed. I don't think they were called lances, but they might have been something like that. But yeah, that's a pretty cool detail. I don't think I noticed that, so.
screenshots we can see some people impaled, so I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is probably where Messmer gets his title. We get some more shots of new gear, and this guy seems to be using a new communion incantation, but with a bear this time. A Crucible bear, as it seems from the horns and red-orange fur. This might actually be a boss, so I hope you guys like your rune bears. It's a bit hard to see, but this character is actually wearing a new armor set, which looks really cool, and I think it's supposed to be something like this. Finally, here we see this otherworldly landscape again. This is probably the most fascinating place in the trailer for more than one reason. I already talked about the potential Numen boats earlier, but this place is nothing like anything we could see from a distance in the Shadowlands. Even the sky doesn't seem to have the veil over it, and I'm really curious where this actually takes place, as it also seems to have these gravestones which can be found on the lands between. Overall, the location looks very other.
Yeah, more specifically within the lands between, it's found in the consecrated snowfield region. I don't remember if it actually shows up on the mountaintops itself, but if you go by the minor Erdtree that's to the east of Ordina, liturgical village, you'll see like those graves everywhere. It'll also be in a couple places within the consecrated snowfield itself, although it's a little bit harder to make out for some pretty obvious reasons, being the blizzard. What were all the new weapons you'd like to know because you have trouble keeping up with this stuff? I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. You need to look at, I think, the Famitsu interview, and I'm pretty sure there's a translation on Reddit, or it would have been the IGN one, but I'm pretty confident it was the Famitsu interview.
Worldly, and in this screenshot we have this lovely fellow. Not sure if it's a spirit or an alien or whatever, but it's really cute somehow. Fighting the player, we have this interesting figure. This character is dressed in the same style as a pregnant woman from the painting, this Berber, Turkish, nomad style of clothing, which is reminiscent of the warrior starting class. Her swordsmanship, coincidentally, is similar to the flowing style of the blue swordsman who was of that nomadic tribe, and sealed away the ancient god of rot in the distant past. But here we have a red swordswoman rather than a blue swordsman, with the same flowing style in a blue area with flowing streams. I can't wait to find out more, especially because if we take a closer look at the blades, it looks like they have similar shape to the Finger Slayer blades.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the Sacred Relic sword almost, because you got like the helix looking like thing, and the fact that it's got like the hole in it. But yeah, Finger Slayer blade works just as well. I know some people have wondered whether or not the dancer lady could be related to Tanith, if not like directly, incidentally, just like the same idea at play here.
Used by the Eternal Cities to betray the Greater Will.
Oh yeah, and if some people in chat don't know, in one of the recent interviews that was not like the first round of interviews, the Chinese one that Miyazaki had, he had said that the NPCs from the base game aren't really going to have a part in the DLC, which is super disappointing, so maybe we won't find out more about Tanith and whatnot, so.
Similar shape to the Finger Slayer blades, used by the Eternal Cities to betray the Greater Will and spelled their doom. This find is particularly important because this is the area with the Numen ships, and the face of the dancer herself kind of looks like Nightfolk to me. Next, we are extremely close to the base of the Shadow Tree. This boss is using gravitational magic while wielding what looks like a lance-sword hybrid, and the boar seems to have something resembling a sideways gravitational sigil on its armor. Also, this might sound crazy, but where are the rider's legs?
Wait. Let me see the sigil again. Gregory was asking if there's St. Trina's lilies in the background. Oh, it's like sideways, kind of, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if that is gravity specifically, but certainly this dude does use purple gravity lightning with his lance, so I could buy it.
On its armor. Also, this might sound crazy, but where are the rider's legs? I have been playing this clip back and forth so many times, and I just can't make any sense of it. Even the armor the rider is wearing seems to actually be part of the design of the boar's armor. I think the rider and the boar might actually be one entity, like they are stuck together somehow. And
do tree sentinel knights have legs? Now I'm like curious. Tree scent. This is a draconic tree sentinel. Let me see. It's kind of hard to tell. That's not the best angle. 1 second. Damn it. Okay, no, he definitely had legs, or has legs. Alright, so that's a crazy detail. Good on Cosmos for bringing that up. Zoli has a video on him? Alright, thank you. Crunchy said, you always thought they might be one being in some way, kind of like Albinorics and wolves. Maybe. I wonder if like his armor covers it.
It's super weird and uses what looks like a new aspect of the Crucible incantation that shoots thorns all over the place. It seems that the players can also obtain it, as seen from the screenshot, and we also get aspects.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that incantation, and just the fact that we're most likely going to get some more Crucible-related stuff like directly there.
Of the Crucible wings, something that a lot of people were hoping for. Interestingly though, the player here is using it without a seal, with weapons on both hands, so it seems to be an Ash of War. And I wasn't lying when I said there's...
Yeah, so typically the way the Ashes of War work is that they're governed by the left hand, so this could be the shield Ash of War, unless it uses no skill specifically, and then it could be like the twin blade Ash of War. But we see the knight dude in the square that gets kicked by like the monk guy wielding this twin blade, and he doesn't look like a stereotypical Crucible knight. So unless we have a kind of additional Crucible knight, as somebody had alluded to in chat earlier today, it seems more likely that the shield could be related to it. But we also had that weird crest on the shield, so now I'm just like, I don't even know, bro.
There's gonna be a lot of Crucible mentions in this video, but this should be it, I think. Finally, we have this guy, which seems to actually be in the same purple sleep-themed area we saw earlier in the trailer. And not sure if it's the same character who transformed or if this is a different boss fight. But this boss is heavily death-themed rather than sleep. Seemingly, From Software might be trying to drive that connection between death and sleep fully in this DLC. He throws a bone boomerang, which is kind of reminiscent of the weapon used by Orphan of...
Does it actually have feet, or they go away? Anyway, this dude kind of reminds me of the Royal Revenants, obviously, because of the way that it has like a pseudo nightmare steed, and its body itself kind of reminds me of a turtle, but not like a really anatomically correct turtle. And just like its face is very fascinating because it's almost like the soul dregs found in like Dark Souls 3. And there's like really nothing in the base game that gives us a good hint as to what this thing is or could be, except for like perhaps the Revenants. The crest on the shield looks the same as the crest on the boar helm. Okay, that could make sense. Aspect of the Crucible, these hands.
Of course, and rides a pale horse.
The Knuckle keeps you up at night.
Black sludge coming out of the ground. The trailer ends on our first proper look of Miquella. I suspect this is probably a cutscene that acts as an ending to the DLC perhaps, and it looks like whatever happened had a profound effect on the Shadowlands.
So I'm kind of the opinion that I almost think that would be the beginning of the DLC. I feel like you might get brought in here and then Miquella like gestures like, hey, go that way, and then you do. But if it's the end, that wouldn't be the first time FromSoft has put like the end of a sequence in like a random shot of a cutscene, or of a trailer rather.
Per look of Miquella. I suspect this is probably a cutscene that acts as an ending to the DLC perhaps, and it looks like whatever happened had a profound effect on the Shadowlands. The sky is completely changed, we cannot see the veil anymore, the shadow tree seems to become grey, and it also doesn't seem to be seeping gold anymore.
As far as like the tree going gray, I don't necessarily think that's really that important, because that's just part of like the base Erdtree. Erdtree branch? I don't remember what the hell I labeled this. Okay, maybe this will show it off. Okay, so this isn't the best angle, but when you look at the Erdtree itself, not all of it is covered with the gold light, and then you get these silvery style veins in some of the upper branches. And this stuff is really hard to see in game because you can't like swing the camera up that high quite often. But anyway, this isn't much better. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, that's just kind of how it looks. Erdtree with the silver veins. Okay, this is kind of the better angle that I think is more similar. So yeah, when you look up, you can see like the gold go away and it becomes a bit more silver. I guess the silver stuff is like the glow is a bit more pronounced with the shadow tree. Anyway. Stella says, the upside to being kind of vague is you can put stuff from the end and it doesn't spoil anything. True. Hey, Dover B, welcome on in. You think it's the end because there's no veil? I need to back up. That's what I get for trying to back up.
Shadowlands.
Crunchy says, you can see it's different though compared to a shot from earlier in the trailer. Maybe, okay.
The sky is completely changed. We cannot see the veil anymore.
Oh, okay. Cosmo said it.
To become gray, and it also doesn't seem to be seeping gold anymore. While Miquella is holding his hand as if to cup the gold that would be seeping from the tree. As we saw, Miquella seems to be...
Yeah, I guess you don't see a lot, huh? I don't know if it would be because you're closer to it or not, or at least with this vantage, but yeah, he might be right here. Oh, it's not seeping gold. Okay, I see what he means by that. I'll need to see like Miquella's hand move away to see if like the sap goes away.
Golden and radiant, alright. So I do wonder if what happened didn't involve him taking whatever power was at play here for himself. Some of you might be wondering, where is Godwin? What about the weird second tree? And is the DLC about Messmer? Well, no. First of all, the DLC is not about Messmer, as captivating as he is right now. Messmer will only be an obstacle on the way, whose story we will be exploring and will be nicely entangled with the history of the Shadowlands and Marika. However, the ultimate plot of the DLC has to do with why Miquella sacrificed so much to reach this place, and what he is trying to accomplish here. And for now, my best guess is it still has to do with Godwin. And sadly, we still don't know anything about the second tree overtaking the Shadow Erdtree. This DLC will have 10 bosses according to Miyazaki, and we're talking 10 main bosses here. So you can be certain that From Software is holding a lot back that we haven't seen yet. Either way.
Which means we'll have at least 30 bosses, because they'll be reused 3 times at the minimum. So Chadwick said, wait, is that the sun there? Let's go ahead. No, that's the Erdtree shining like the sun. Honestly, yeah, I don't know if you could actually say it's the sun in the background or whatnot. For what it's worth, there is the sun in the actual lands between, but it's like the size of a pinhole. It's really small.
I do wonder if what
Miquella is showing us a flashback. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so yeah, the sap is no longer flowing from it. Interesting.
Happened didn't involve him taking whatever power was at play here for himself. Some of you might be wondering, where is Godwin? What about the weird second tree? And is the DLC about Messmer? Well, no. First of all, the DLC is not about Messmer, as captivating as he is right now. Messmer will only be an obstacle on the way, whose story we will be exploring and will be nicely entangled with the history of the Shadowlands and Marika. However, the ultimate plot of the DLC has to do with why Miquella sacrificed so much to reach this place, and what he is trying to accomplish here. And for now, my best guess is it still has to do with Godwin. And sadly, we still don't know anything about the second tree overtaking the Shadow Erdtree. This DLC will have 10 bosses according to Miyazaki, and we're talking 10 main bosses here. So you can be certain that From Software is holding a lot back that we haven't seen yet. Either ways, we will be seeing it soon. Until then, don't hesitate to check out my other lore videos. I'm currently working on building my emancipation theory, of which I highly recommend you check out the first part about Marika's motivations by clicking here.
Hello, everybody.
I do kind of
What's up,
hate how
first person?
playlists automatically advance to the next one on the thing, even if you have autoplay turned off. So I'm going to go ahead and link Cosmos's video into chat. That was a good one. I've gone ahead and liked it myself. So if you guys want to support Cosmos with like and a sub, I definitely encourage it. This is a great video, very thorough, even if I had some very like minor differences of opinion there. So yeah, you definitely pointed out a few things that I didn't notice myself, so I definitely appreciate that. And then Jack was asking about what weapons came up in the Famitsu interview. I don't remember if they listed all of them, but okay. Hold on, let me try to make this bigger for you guys. So this is the Reddit translation of the Famitsu interview by our guy or gal, the Angry Furlong. Unless they took it from somebody else and I didn't look. Are there new weapons, magic, or incantations? Miyazaki said, blah, blah, blah. There are 8 new weapon types added. Famitsu says 8. There are a great number of weapons in the main title. Specifically, what kinds of new weapons are added in the DLC? Miyazaki says, first of all, they're fairly classic large Japanese katana known as odachi, and others are reverse hand swords, gyakute ken, and more particular, highly novel ones. So he doesn't say it. Translator notes. It should not be odachi, but daito. Okay, that makes sense. Tachi. I mean, yeah, I don't really blame them. It's kind of like English speakers wouldn't even really know the difference, but I'm pretty sure. I thought it was daito, like gigantic blade, essentially in the Japanese, but I would need to look at it. There's also some debate as to whether a reverse hand or reverse grip weapon should be called gyakute or sakate. I feel like sakate would probably be, I don't want to say like more correct, but that might be more on brand, because Kenshin and like Rurouni Kenshin uses sakabato, which is like reverse blade, like reversed edge blade, I guess. Anyway. Yeah, I don't really know which would be more preferable. Anyway, that's not important for you guys. There's a traditional Japanese sword grip called sakatemochi. Oh, so like holding it in the hand backwards. Okay. Anyway. For example, martial arts, if you imagine monks, or dual offensive defensive dueling shields, or throwing daggers that change all attacks into throws. So it should still be fun and refreshing for players who have gone through all the weapons in the main story. So I don't think he listed all of them. Katanas, reverse blades, dueling shields, throwing knives. We've seen the kicks, so that's 5. We saw the lances, that's 6. Potentially the chakram would be 7. So if there's an 8th one, I'm not sure what it is. All right. And Darth Moda, yeah, I saw your messages earlier. I didn't welcome you in, so nice to have you. Appreciate that. And then more lore has a list right here. We have the Great Katana, the Chakram, throwing knives, martial arts, dueling shields, reverse grip blades. So we're blank on 2 slots. So I would say the 7th slot would be the lances, because we saw it with the Boar Rider. I thought I read that in the actual Japanese interview, but I might have just, misremembered, and because I saw the lance in the trailer, I just put it in there in my mind. Yeah, no problem. Okay. So yeah, that actually took me a lot more time to go through, but maybe just because I'm like bouncing off of chat a lot too. But yeah, good video by Cosmos. I appreciate it as always. So the next one that I have on the docket for tonight will be, what is the purpose of the Wandering Mausoleums by Ratatosker? This is a short one, only like less than 9 minutes. So we'll probably maybe only just do this video for the night, because I feel like I would take a lot of time pausing for the next one here. Okay, so let's go ahead and check it out. What is the purpose of the Wandering Mausoleums? Elden Ring lore by Ratatosker.
Hello everybody, this is Redditosker. Today let's talk about the lore of the Wandering Mausoleums.
Razor.
The walking
Rasar.
tombs scattered across the lands between, guarded by beheaded spirits. Who built them, and why? What's their purpose? We're going to go through all of the potentially relevant evidence, and then at the end come to some speculative conclusions. We'll begin with some item descriptions. The Eclipse Crest Heater Shield says, "The sun in eclipse is said to be the symbol of the Wandering Mausoleum where the soulless demigods slumber." A ghost near the Weeping Peninsula's mausoleum says, "The mausoleum prowls, cradling the soulless demigod. O Marika, Queen Eternal, he is your unwanted child." Okay, so the mausoleums have Marika's soulless and unwanted children. Since Godwyn was the first demigod to die, these ones must have happened after. They are probably the demigods that fell during the Night of the Black Knives. The Eclipse...
Yeah, this has bothered me for a while as well, that within the Wandering Mausoleums, which are of Nox design, we find demigods which should have theoretically died after Godwyn did. Because if he was the first dead of the demigods, it makes sense that these ones would have to also happen either on the Night of the Black Knives or after it. So anyway, with that being said, we were talking in the stream earlier today whether or not the idea of a demigod is just a title and whatnot, and setting that aside, I have also looked at the Japanese for whether or not they were trying to use more specific terminology to refer to Godwyn as the first dead of the demigod, and this is kind of an issue which crops up in Dark Souls as well, because for once, Japanese is a bit more specific with its terminology than the English is. So in English, we might not have like a lot of good words for like the undead, whereas Japanese. Anyway, leaving that concept aside again for a moment. So sorry for jumping around. As far as dead is concerned in Dark Souls, the undead are called fushi, which means like undying technically, which is often translated as immortal, because if something is undying, it's effectively immortal. So that's kind of what hollows are called, whereas the first of the dead, aka Nito, is called Shisha, which literally means like dead one. So you could say like ones of death essentially could mean like the first of the dead. And so taking that concept from Dark Souls, with Nito being a different form of dead than the undead hollows, I was wondering if that could happen in Elden Ring as well. Unfortunately, that's not the case. While Godwyn is called first of the dead the exact same way that Nito is called first of the dead at times, we have other descriptions which say that he was like the first of the dead demigods, and not like capital D dead, I guess. Sorry if that doesn't make like a ton of sense right now. I should probably just like pull up the descriptions and pull up the Japanese just to show you guys, but I don't really think it's going to make that much of a difference, to be honest there. And then Astinex was asking for any tips learning Japanese. So this might be a little bit brutal and a little bit blunt, but I would say don't learn Japanese unless you actually intend to use Japanese, or unless you just want a bit of like a mental stimulant or a way to kill time, because it's really not that worth it for as much effort as it would take to get to any level of proficient. It's one of the toughest languages for native English speakers to learn for a variety of reasons. So with that caveat out of the way, I would say if you want to learn Japanese, there's a lot more resources now. So, okay, when I first learned Japanese, like the internet wasn't as great a repository for information as we had now. It took a lot longer to watch YouTube videos back then. But yeah, no, like nowadays I would suggest like maybe looking at more specialist YouTube channels for beginners, because that might help give you a bit of direction. And if you actually like it and want to stick with it, I would highly recommend like actually taking classes so you can get that kind of direct feedback. But if you're not ready to go down that route, I would say like looking at videos, perhaps watching like Japanese streamers, because there's a lot of those on Twitch and whatnot, and like YouTube, just finding a niche that you're naturally interested in English and trying to work your Japanese into that, or, you know, vice versa. Maybe getting like the equivalent of a pen pal with like Discord or like language services nowadays, and picking up like workbooks and working on your own. So I would say like if you're going to go to Japan and you don't have like a ton of time, first learn katakana, because that will be the most useful for you in trying to identify things like restaurants and order things from menus. And then from there, it's just like the basic baby steps of like learning any language. So yeah. And yeah, as Chadwick says, study. Definitely true. How many kids does Marika have? All of them, Stella. They're all her children. Hey, Jesse, nice to see you again. And then Morlor was asking if a lance wouldn't be a great spear. You mean there's literally a great spear called the lance? I'm pretty sure he said it in the Famitsu interview, but I would need to double check. I might like look into it while I played the video here, but no guarantees because I might get distracted.
Crest Greatshield says, the eclipsed sun, drained of color, is the protective star of soulless demigods. It aids the Mausoleum Knights by keeping destined death at bay. Okay, so, something about the sun in eclipse drains it of color, and a sun drained of color in eclipse has the power to keep destined death at bay. Does that mean that the normal sun does the opposite? Is that why in Limgrave, during the day, the crucified appear dead, but at night, when the sun is not present, they come alive and their pained screams are audible? And assuming that the eclipse can keep destined death at bay, why are the Mausoleums trying to do that? Does that mean that the demigods aren't actually dead? The term that's used to refer to them is...
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite like details about the environmental storytelling of Elden Ring, just like how those crucified folk only wake up at night, essentially. And I'm pretty confident when you first port into the Lands Between and the Precipice of Anticipation, the Chapel of Anticipation, it's also night when you like land, technically, or when you wake up, which is, you know, notable. A lot of other events also seem to happen at night, but I can't tell like how much of it is just for like ambient stuff or if it's relevant. Because when you first meet Melina, if you're like out and about at noon game time, it'll like fast forward you to night when you rest at the bonfire or the site of grace. So with her having this weird connection to death, it really brings up a lot of questions. He hasn't talked about the Seed of the Sun yet, but you know that kind of all relates to the eclipse. I'm pretty confident he'll like bring that up shortly here, so I'll probably just leave it alone. Lore and language learning tips for real though. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate that. You may have to rework a lot of your theories. You may be super wrong. Ooh, spill the details, Chadwick. Why are you wrong? I want to know more.
soulless. And that's a word that's also used with Godwyn, who was also killed by the Black Knife assassins. So are these demigods soulless in a similar way? Did they, like Godwyn, die in soul alone, but their bodies remain intact? Are they alive in some way? Alive enough that it's important for the Mausoleums to try and keep destined death away from them, to prevent them from being dead completely? And if that's the case, then why are they trying to be preserved? And who set up the Mausoleums in the first place to preserve them? Alright, let's put a pin on that, and we'll get back to it in a moment.
I was hoping it was going to start like going into like this Nox, Pepe, Ofnir territory here.
Let's talk about the other instances in which the word soulless is used. In Castle Sol, there's a ghost that says, "O great sun, frigid sun of soul, surrender yourself to the eclipse, grant life to the soulless bones." There's another ghost that says, "Lord Miquella, forgive me. The sun has not been swallowed. Our prayers were lacking. Your comrade remains soulless." Alright, so here are the facts that tells us. The people that were in Castle Sol were working for Miquella. They were trying to create an eclipse, and through creating an eclipse, the sun would be swallowed and life would be granted to soulless bones. They failed in this attempt, and Miquella's comrade, who they were trying to revive, remained soulless. Now this could point to Miquella being in charge and responsible for all of the Wandering Mausoleums. He was in charge of what was going on in Castle Sol. He was trying to eclipse the sun as a means to keep destined death at bay and revive someone who's soulless. And there's a Wandering Mausoleum right outside the castle. So while it's unconfirmed, it's certainly possible that Miquella collected the bodies of the soulless demigods, housed them in mausoleums, had the warriors in service to each of those demigods become headless Mausoleum knights, so that they could protect their fallen lord while Miquella searches for a way to bring them back to life. Let's focus right now specifically on who Miquella was trying to bring back with the prayers at Castle Sol.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't pause it for that point. Yeah, so trying to say that all of this is Miquella is very interesting, and it's not something I've entertained before. I'm a little bit skeptical just because I feel like the reach of the Wandering Mausoleums makes it hard for me to believe that Miquella's influence would have extended to so many areas simultaneously when a place like Liurnia could have presumably been, you know, contested by either Rykard's rule or Radahn's rule or like Ranni's rule. But we also have the Weeping Peninsula, and I couldn't imagine Godric just kind of being fine with that, considering like the shattering and whatnot. I almost feel like he would probably want to destroy it. Maybe not. There might be other reasons, like they could be afraid of like Deathroot. I don't know. So that's just kind of like my knee-jerk reaction there to hearing this. So let's hear more. Chadwick said, the sun is so central to your position on the Giants in Frenzy that if it doesn't operate in the way you've believed for so long, you could be soaked. Man, I feel that. Yep, that's just how it goes sometimes, man. But yeah, we'll see. And Reality asks, doesn't he try to give true death and not bring back? So, potentially. And one of the issues with that is we're told by a ghost in the catacombs immediately to the west of the first step. Like the first catacombs you could go in with the Erdtree Burial Watchdog, in which you get the noble sorcerer ashes, that the ghost there says true death or means returning to the roots of the Erdtree. It's either that one or maybe it's like the very like northern Limgrave ghost. Anyway, true death means returning to the roots of the Erdtree, and then he says like something to the effect of like how despicable like those who live in death refusing the roots calls. So Miquella wanting a proper death for Godwyn or a true death for Godwyn could mean either oblivion or returning to the Erdtree's roots, which seems less likely. I mean, he might want that, but it might just be like the cat's out of the bag and there's no returning to that. As Malekith says, like there's no restoring or returning the Golden Order or whatever it is.
Who is his comrade? The obvious first answer is Godwyn the Golden. He is, after all, Miquella's half-brother and first of the demigods to die. And his death is a big problem in the lands between. But Miquella bringing Godwyn back to life contradicts what he says in the Golden Epitaph sword. Its description says, a sword made to commemorate the death of Godwyn the Golden, first of the demigods to die, infused with the humble prayer of a young boy. O brother, Lord brother, please die a true death. The prayer of the young boy is most likely Miquella. So assuming the comrade Miquella is attempting to revive in Castle Sol is Godwyn, then either Miquella changed his mind since the sword epitaph was made, or he still wants Godwyn to die a true death, but he can't manage it without bringing him back to life first. And in that case, he's using the eclipse to bring Godwyn back to life so that he can die properly. Or it could be that the soulless comrade isn't Godwyn at all. It could be one of the soulless demigods housed in the Wandering Mausoleums, and there's some distant possibility that it could be Ensha Miquella is trying to revive. Ensha is the unspeaking adherent of Sir Gideon the All-Knowing. But the armor he wears is graced with gold human bones, and its description says that the bones belong to an ancient lord, the soulless king, the lord of the lost and the desperate, who was known as Ensha. Gideon's servant who is currently wearing the armor is maybe not important, but this ancient lord Ensha has some odd things in common with Godwyn and with Miquella. First of all, they're both soulless. Godwyn is known as the Golden and Ensha has golden human bones, and the armor describes Ensha as the lord of the lost and the desperate, which is similar to how Fia describes Godwyn as the lord of the meek and the many. And that description has a loose connection to Miquella as well. The sacred crown helm reads, worn by foot soldiers sworn to the Haligtree. Who is it that Miquella shall bless, if not the low and the meek?
So this isn't necessarily related to Ratatosker's theory here, but I did forget to mention when looking at Cosmos' video and the whole idea about impalement relating to heraldry and Messmer, that The braid could also potentially relate to Miquella, because you do get this design on the Erdtree soldiers' helmets. So could that mean Messmer and Miquella were a thing? And if so, is it like a dream thing or a shadow thing? Anyway, forgot to bring that up. So yeah, Ratatosker's brought up a lot of good points here. As far as the Japanese goes, in terms of trying to compare it to wanting Godwin to be revived, there's a little bit of what's the word? Not incongruity, inconsistency between what the two spirits and Castle Soul are talking about. The one where he says that your comrade remains soulless is more or less the same, but damn it, what's the other one? Soulless Bones. Oh yeah, grant life to the Soulless Bones. Okay, so Soulless Bones makes it sound like a certain kind of way. Where are we at? Soulless Bones. So this character here means like husk. So it's like the soulless husk, and grant like rebirth, which is perfectly fine, not necessarily life. I guess that is kind of like a sticking point. So I don't know if I'm going to be stepping on Ratatosker's toes here, but in Lutel's Spirit Ashes, it says Lutel sacrificed her life so that in death she could continue to protect a soulless demigod until their revival, earning her the hero's honor of Erdtree burial. Well, the Japanese here actually uses the past tense to refer to the soulless demigod's revival. So let's look up here. Tamashi Naki Demigodo. That means the soulless demigod gets when they get revived. When they were revived is kind of more like it, because shita is the past tense form of suru. So they were revived. So Lutel's soulless demigod canonically revived somehow. Or hold on. Saitan? Damn it. I hate having to contextualize so much. Because it's like, to make one point, I have to make 3 other points before that. Okay, so Saitan can mean to revive, but the issue is revive in English means to be like brought back to life, whereas the Japanese verb, more strictly speaking, kind of has more of a connotation of rebirth, but revival and rebirth are synonymous. And my point here is that this is ambiguous, but the way that it is technically written in Japanese is that it doesn't necessarily have to strictly reply revival, and it could more specifically literally mean rebirth. Now, why am I harping on this right now? It's because the idea of implanting something into something else so it can be reborn is something that is kind of at play with the cuckoo, I think. Or at the very least, with Renala and her amber egg. She talks about rebirth, I think. But anyway, the main point that I'm trying to make with like the soulless demigods is that if you take something that was in this demigods, and I tend to believe that their gold is left over because their soul is gone, but that's like not too important. Whatever left over life within them, if you brought that into a new life in the form of like Fia's rune or like Baldachin blessings, I think you can make the argument that that's kind of a form of rebirth, but not like literal revival, which might be what some people think initially. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. Wait, what is it called? Soulless husk? No, the bones. The soulless bones? Okay, grant life to the soulless bones. Okay, yeah. So going back to the whole Godwin thing and these castle soul ghosts. Oh, great son, frigid son of soul, surrender yourself to the eclipse. Grant life to the soulless bones. Here, the Japanese could be saying to the soulless husk, grant rebirth, essentially. And that could tie into what's going on with Lutel's demigod. And that might also tie into how we get remembrances from the bodies of these demigods. And so with remembrances being leftover gold or kind of runes. At the very least, they're leftover memories. You might be able to take a demigod's memories and put it into something new, and that might be what's going on with Godwyn, but we don't know. So that's kind of a really big tangent to go on, I understand, to make a point that is ultimately speculation, I suppose, but hopefully that made sense. And if you guys have questions about that, feel free to let me know in the chat, as always. Darth asks, do I think any of the factions that we currently know about joined forces, or do you think each Empyrean was acting solely on their own? That's a very good question, and I think it's nuanced because we're told in the first Defense of Leyndell Sword Monument that the Sovereign Alliance rotted from within, or something like that, signs of bloody conspiracy. So initially, it seemed like there were factions of the Shard Bearers who were working together in their own kind of power plays, but as the Shattering grew on, those alliances may have unraveled even further, and then it might have devolved into everyone being for themselves. But with that being said, it still bothers me that Melania didn't necessarily kill Godric and proclaim his great rune whenever she defeated him. Radahn also may have kicked Godric's ass, but didn't do that either. Rykard is left to just kind of rot in blasphemy. So I don't know why the demigods didn't prevail over each other, but it seems, with the exception of Miquella and Melania, because they're kind of treated as one unit, it doesn't really seem as though there's a lot of cohesion by the end of the Shattering by any means. Oh yeah, and then Chadwick brings up the land octopi and the larval tears in reference to things being reborn. So those are good things to bring up. I don't want to talk about them because they're kind of incidentally related, but it just takes a bit of contextualization to build them up. Maybe I'll do it anyway. Let me think about it. So if you look at the land octopus ovary, it has a very interesting implication. Land octo. Okay, so land octopuses eat humans in order to bear young, and theirs is the blood that runs through these ovaries. So the reason this is important is because through other bits of information, like the strips of white flesh, we're told that bloodless creatures have white flesh. Land octopi drop strips of white flesh, and when you try to bleed them, they don't bleed red, I think. Anyway, so they don't have normal blood of their own, and they need human blood, and through things like beast blood, we're shown that at the very least red-blooded organisms, or maybe more likely things which prey upon other things, carnivores, essentially omnivores, they probably consume gold because beast blood says it's fresh beast blood glinting with gold. This glimmering blood never rots or decays. So red blood gets gold in it, and land octopi need blood to produce young. And so if gold equals life to some degree, then giving gold to the land octopi allows a form of birth, if not rebirth. So the gold might essentially get incubated in the eggs in a metaphorical way here. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And then I think you also mentioned silver tears. Yeah, kind of something similar to that, but we can leave that alone for now. Hey, Kyle Kramer, welcome to the stream. It makes sense for those two to not want the runes. Radahn wanted the Golden Order to continue, and the Blade of Miquella probably didn't want anything herself and just followed Miquella to his godless tree. So I don't know about Radahn. Well, he certainly seemed to be a big fan of Godfrey and Radagon to some degree. There could have been a chance that he felt strong enough that he should have been the leader of the next age. Because we're told pretty much that they all fought to become Elden Lord, or because the strength of the runes tainted their minds and drove them mad. But that doesn't necessarily add up to what we get in the final build of the game with Godric getting his ass kicked no less than 3 times between Leyndell, Radon, and Melania. And then Doggo says, Gideon said he thought Marika's plan was for everyone to struggle for all eternity. Maybe she saw it within like the law of causality there. Yeah.
The Ensha connection is probably not relevant. The armor set is the only time that this character is mentioned. But the similarities between Ensha, Miquella, and Godwyn were eyebrow-raising enough that I thought it was important to mention them, and probably keep an eye out for mentions of Ensha in the DLC, in case information found there suddenly makes him relevant. Alright, let's put a pin on Miquella, and talk about Godwyn specifically. The Deathroot item description says, on the night of the dire plot, the stolen Rune of Death enabled the first death of a demigod. Later, the Rune of Death spread across the lands between through the underground roots of the Great Tree, sprouting in the form of Deathroot. Alright, so after Godwyn was killed, he became soulless. You can see his body in the Deeproot depths merged into the Great Tree. But that's probably not where he was killed. After he died, his body was probably brought there and was interred into the Great Tree in the hope that he would be reabsorbed into the Erdtree. As a result of his burial in the Great Tree, the Rune of Death spread through the roots all across the lands
I like his little animation here.
between, sprouting in the form of Deathroot, and those who came in contact with Deathroot became those who live in death. Now, it's probably the case that nobody knew that this would happen when they...
Honestly, the most annoying thing to me about Those Who Live in Death is that we have Those Who Live in Death hanging from trees. How the hell were they in contact with Deathroot? Does Deathroot come from the branches? And for anybody who's like wondering that, we have a hanging Those Who Live in Death Skelly boy in Leyndell itself in the lower section, kind of by where you find the ulcerated tree spirit, by the dudes who pop out of the ground in like the cemetery down there. That's where you'll find it. And also in Fair Missoula, there's like a bunch of the bestial Those Who Live in Deaths, which live in trees in death.
put Godwyn in the Great Tree. This was supposed to just be an Erdtree burial for Godwyn. Various spirit ashes describe Erdtree burial as a hero's honor, and Godwyn's heroic exploits are well documented in the lore. As a great hero and the first demigod to die, his burial in a place of great importance, like the very heart of the Great Tree, was only natural. And assuming that that's true, assuming that burying Godwyn produced unexpected results, that they didn't know that Deathroot would sprout after they interred him into the Great Tree, then that could very well be the reason for the Wandering Mausoleums, and the reason why they're designed the way they are. If the other demigods that fell are soulless in the way Godwyn is soulless, then Miquella would have good reason to prevent them from undergoing Erdtree burial. Assuming spreading Deathroot through the Great Tree wasn't on purpose, then it wouldn't have been until after Godwyn was interred that they realized their mistake. And so the Mausoleums could have been a way...
Alright, so I'm going to release some cursed lore knowledge on the chat, so I apologize in advance. But it bothers me so much, so much, that so many things in FromSoft games are off-center. So when you go into like the Wandering Mausoleums and whatnot, if you look in the coffin, sarcophagus, whatever you want to call it, is off-center in multiple ways. Like it doesn't match, like it's not centered against like the far back wall or the front wall. And then when you look at this thing, it's off-center. So like he tried to straighten this. It's not completely straight, but I mean this part is pretty damn straight. So this is crooked, and then it doesn't match this stuff super well. Anyway,
the other demigods that fell are soulless in the way Godwyn is soulless.
Yeah, space is convoluted.
Then Miquella would have good reason to prevent them from undergoing Erdtree burial. Assuming spreading Deathroot through the Great Tree wasn't on purpose, then it wouldn't have been until after Godwyn was interred that they realized their mistake. And so the Mausoleums could have been a way to prevent that from happening to the other demigods. By keeping them away from the ground and having the Mausoleums wander, they might be preventing the Rune of Death from taking root. And if that's the case, then the eclipsed sun, the protective star of the soulless demigods, might be keeping destined death at bay for that purpose, to prevent them from following in Godwyn's footsteps, until a solution can be devised.
And just to expand upon that point in case anybody didn't put it together fully, by keeping Destined Death at bay, I believe Ratatosk would be saying keeping the fragments of Destined Death, that it would be like embedded within these soulless demigods at bay. So basically he's saying, I believe that by keeping them like wandering, the death root won't sprout within these bodies and then infect other stuff. So yeah, it's a pretty good idea there. I think that is like perfectly acceptable headcanon, but as always, I will like reserve final judgment until something else seems to work better. And then Crunchy says, it's amazing that it doesn't move more when those mausoleums jump. Yeah, it's a good point.
Alright, that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.
Damn, I was muted. I went off really hard. No. Damn it. Okay. Damn it. I was going on a big tangent. So I addressed Crunchy's statement about mausoleums jumping. So, okay. Classic LP move. That's what I get for, trying to be courteous and hydrate not next to the mic. Pet turtles probably ate me. Like, I kind of know what I said, but I'm just like trying to mentally regather myself here. Okay, so I think also Chadwick. No, who said it? Okay, it was Galamoth. The only issue is that they lie down every night. So what I said in response to that was, I don't necessarily think that's an issue, because if the sun equals death, that can kind of make a lot of sense for multiple reasons. And then I brought up in Renala's boss fight, we're told, okay, so let me back it up. Okay, so if sun equals death, that's perfectly fine. And then the implication could be that in nighttime or not sun time, you would get life, which is sort of supported in Renala's boss fight because her children, which sing a lullaby to her, will sing sleep tight, find life in Mother's Umbra, which can be kind of hard to make out. And Umbra is kind of another word for darkness, which is interesting because it equates life and darkness to some degree, which isn't fully compatible potentially with other aspects of darkness, as we're told of in the Darkness Incantation, which is described as being graceless. And setting that aside, we're also told of how within eternal darkness, not the spell type, some of the guilty were able to come into contact with the Bloodstar and find another kind of light with that. So, moving on from like the Bloodstar stuff, we also have this weird instance of the primeval currents connections to darkness, but not necessarily being alive in the organic sense. So there's like a kind of inorganic life within the primeval current potentially, which might be tied to Estelle, the so-called spawn of the void, not necessarily spawn of darkness, not necessarily the natural born of the void. So there is a certain kind of life within darkness, but that life might not necessarily be like organic life, depending on how one feels about Estelle, because like he's kind of like a skeleton, and his existence is just really bewildering. And like the Crystallians are inorganic, and they can't reproduce, kind of similarly to like the land octopi, which I'm kind of glad we brought up earlier. So yeah, moving on from all that, Jonah asks, would an order under the Erdtree in Malenia be an order of rot? If so, wouldn't that kind of be like another path of life being dragged back into a one great state? Just a world of rot stew? That's a very good question. I can't necessarily say whether or not Miquella's Erdtree would be rot inherently, or whether it would be corrupted by Malenia. And with the two both being Empyreans, we don't know whether they would have conflicting orders or complementary ones. If they could actually fully incorporate the other into themselves, if either were to be raised to the status of like the Vision's vessel, the god of the lands between. So yeah, Ponyboy, in Mother's Umbra equals in Mother's Shadow, yes. What word is Umbra being used to translate is a better question. As far as I know, there aren't actual subtitles for Renala's children, so I couldn't tell you. But I mean, whether the localizers had it right or not, I mean, I just feel like Umbra's connections to darkness is close enough that it would work. Whether or not you want to say it's shade specifically, that might be relevant, but I don't really know. And then Ponyboy thinks it could be a poetic way of saying in Mother's protection, as in like the shadow of her. I see what you're saying there. Yeah, there is also that possibility too. And then Emerald Jack says, in Shintoism, everything has kami or a source of life, even in inanimate things like stones. Kind of like how glintstone holds the vitality of the stars. So I might be wrong here, but I don't think you're technically accurate, because I don't think literally everything has kami. It's only like certain things which are like special, which technically get kami. But that isn't to say like there aren't essences of things which are... Anyway. Yeah. So... I don't know if I was muted when I talked about untaking the pin out of like the whole Nox Wandering Mausoleum stuff. Because it is bothersome to me that like the Nox would have built these wandering mausoleums, and for like what purpose? Because if they were all done post Shattering or like post Night of Black Knives, like shouldn't the Nox have already been quote unquote banished? Is this a style that was employed by Marika and her underlings, or Radagon and his underlings, like the Nox style design? Which is something that I think Ratatoskr was tactful to not bring up in his video there. So I know I'm repeating myself, but I just don't know if I was muted when I talked about it. Stella says, when objects gain a kind of spirit, it's because they've been around a long time, if you remember correctly. I think there's probably a bit more nuance to it than that, but I'm also like not an adherent follower of Shinto, so I can't really speak with too much more authority on that topic specifically, unfortunately. And then Jonah thinks Miquella is effectively lost to the world of the base game when it comes to his active influence. Millennia in your mind has inherited lordship of the Erdtree. I don't know if I'd call it lordship as much as it is like stewardship. Because she says like she was waiting for Miquella's return while she dreamt. So if that is the case, she doesn't seem to be too privy to the full plan there. But yeah. Doggo says, it seems like they could just be existing mausoleums. They look like they were lifted right out of the ground. They could be repurposed from a prior order or something. Maybe. And yeah, that actually brings me back to Galamoth's point, or was it a question? Where they don't sleep at night. So yeah, that doesn't bother me. Because, yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of like losing it as it gets later on in the night here. Sucks that I was muted. I was doing so well, and then I lost it at the end there. Yeah, and honestly, like, I would like to read chat a bit more, but you guys see how much my mind wanders already. So it's kind of hard for me to, like, try to process what's going on with chat and reply. So whether we want to blame my self-diagnosed ADHD or not, I don't know what to tell you. All right, but yeah, that was a good video. I did link it into chat. I think I was muted when I did that, so I'm going to go ahead and link it for everybody again. If you want to give Ratatosker a like or a sub there, it'll be appreciated. So here you go. I've already liked the video myself. So unfortunately, we don't really have enough time to get into Most Denier and their video with the Shadow of the Erdtree analysis and speculation, talking about the Veiled Crucible, but we'll probably get to that one tomorrow. If not first, then, you know, probably something early. I don't know exactly when I want to watch yet, so stay posted for that. I'll, you know, figure it out eventually or not. And if you guys do have more suggestions for videos you want me to watch, feel free to link them either in the Discord or on this video itself and not in the chat, so that way I get like the notification and I can remember to add them to my playlist later. So right, everybody, that'll be it for me for the stream for tonight. Thank you all so much for joining, as always. I appreciate that. We will be going live again tomorrow, starting technically today, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so hopefully we'll catch you on the next one. Till then, take care, stay safe. Last Protagonist out.